27th. We're here to talk about recreation options this evening. So, Matt?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Patrick and Paul have been working hard along with Rylan and Luke, who I'm pretty sure I saw coming. Oh, there he's behind the board there. On potential partnership for expansion of the sports day impact sports facility. Patrick's also put together some information on the 15 acres that the town owns and a possible full rec center at that location. So Patrick will go through his presentation, and then maybe if Rylan or Luke have any input or information to share, and then we can just open it up for board discussion and questions.
Okay. Let's plan on breaking down, or we'll stop we need to stop by 6:45 in order to do a presentation to the youth club, about a 5-minute presentation of some certificates. If there is time during our discussion for public comment, if anyone would like to make public comment, we'll allow that. If we run short on time for public comment, invite anyone to stay after and deliver public comment during the regular meeting. So with that, Patrick.
Yep. So as Manager Magley mentioned, tonight's kind of a status update. As you guys know, we've been kind of working on two simultaneous processes. One, to evaluate the partnership opportunity over at Sports Stable Impact Sports, and then continuing our work on the Town 15 property. So we'll, with that, just kind of jump right into the conversation. This initial slide was actually a slide we put together at ProStack's request, I think a year ago, just trying to chronicle the history of the discussion. I think everybody's probably familiar with it, but it is a conversation that has been going on in some form or fashion since the dissolution of the districts in 2002, and probably to some extent prior to that. But you can see that it's taken a lot of different forms, and the reason why I wanted to show it is just to reiterate to the board that it's something that the advisory committees have looked at. We've had a fair amount of public engagement. In 2014, we went through the updated community survey. I won't go through each line, but it's been a robust dialogue, and I think a lot of creative ideas have come out of it. So with that, starting off the presentation looking at the Town 15 down Colton Road and McCaslin Boulevard. Several years back, we had done a process with BRS, some of you may remember, which was the card game. And this card game kind of took priorities for amenities and reordered them. We had a small, medium, and large. And we had a lot of community participation. We gave the community the opportunity to work through several sets of priorities. That then led into the community survey, which then led into kind of this working group discussion. And from all that, and based off of previous recommendation from ProStack earlier this year, we were able to come up with a full-scale recreation center, roughly between 50 and 60,000 square feet. It would fit on the Kleiner Corner property, roughly costing between 28 and 35 million, including the site costs. I think the last time that we spoke about this, I let the board know that we were starting to look at, it's great to have the cost of the facility itself, but it's an untouched site. How do we get water to it? How do we get electricity to it? How do we get sanitation to it? What does the parking look like? So not wanting to underestimate those costs, which I think we have done in the past. We tend to get stuck on talking about just the facility costs, not these other site improvements. And then we come back to the board with some, additional $10 million. So what's this all about? So we were able to work over the last month or so with BRS and with a site construction firm. And I think we're safely saying that if we were to build a 50 to 60,000 square foot recreation facility at the site, it would cost anywhere between 28 and 35 million. And for those of you that were part of the 2014 survey discussions and some of that with Chris Strapinski and Greenplay, you'll remember that we were also able to start to kind of tie operational numbers based off of a square footage number. And this is a kind of a quick and dirty way to start to project what operations may cost. So applying that same theory, and again, it's an imperfect theory. There's lots of variables, but order of magnitude operating cost would be about 1.5 million. This was also briefly talked about earlier this year when we were looking at the Lakeshore opportunity, and Paul and the finance staff did a great job helping us on the Parks and Rec side do some analysis about what an operations cost would look like if we were to run it on our own. So I put that note on there just to make sure that we're being consistent and we're not bouncing around numbers from one presentation to the next presentation. Within this facility, again, great design, great layout. We've always talked about having, you know, how amazing would it be if you had the views from your aquatics facility pointing out to the west, but lower level, aquatics, locker room, party room, some cafe space, climbing wall, gymnasium, community rooms, lounge area, child watch, active adult space, admin offices. And actually, I apologize, I've got climbing in there twice. And then on the upper level, really dedicated towards fitness, weights, and then an aerobic studio. This layout here is very consistent with what ProStack had come up with in their, this was back in March, they had kind of a priority list of amenities that they thought were important to include into a facility.
So on the competitive pool, those 6 lanes,
Correct.
25 meter?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. With quite a bit of deck space. I mean, this, with that, you know, kind of 15 acres down there and the configuration of it being relatively flat, it lends itself to, I mean, it's a great parcel if you were to do something like this. And as you'll see when we transition into the partnership facility, obviously we're a little bit more constrained by space. But this is just a little bit of the work that we've been doing with the designers on this part of the project.
And that's a track around the basketball court?
That is correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that wasn't like, not for, you didn't mention it, so I want to make sure it wasn't
I apologize,
Okay.
that is
Okay.
you see there's
so
a little bit of a
that's
green
not like
line.
a tentative, that's
No,
definitely in the plan.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And this was, you know, if we had everything in there that we heard from the 2014 survey in terms of top priorities, and ProStack had that priority list that they prioritized earlier, this is what that would look like in some form or fashion. So now transitioning on, the other directive that staff has been working on, as you guys are well aware, is exploring this opportunity to have a partnership over at the Sports Stable Impact Sports in the kind of open corridor area, if you will, in front of the building. I think the easiest way to reference it is right behind the drop-off circle. And this one we've actually been doing quite a bit of work on, given the shorter timeline, but I think we're comfortable saying that you could build a facility within this square footage for roughly 10 to 12 million, applying the same type of reason on an operation scale. You're looking at something around 800,000 of operating costs, and then having some basic dialogue with Rylan and Luke, understanding that these would become shared costs if the spaces were shared. This is something we also brought up during the presentation previously when we were talking about Lakeshore. And Bill Smith, who Bill's over there, did a fantastic job over the last week. I do have some renderings, some potential elevations for the board, just to, again, very conceptual. But I think the first hurdle in thinking of this project is, does it really fit in that space? And what would it potentially look like? So we did ask for a
So
couple
Patrick,
different-
using that other picture, what
Sure.
part of that's would that
Just
whole?
this, yeah, this kind of
off-white?
off-white. We asked to have it colored just slightly different, so it was a little bit easier to discern tonight. A couple of different on the side elevation. And here, for the purposes of tonight, we're showing 3 stories. just for context, that you'll see actually won't match the two-story floor plans that we'll look at, but we did ask that he include the 3 stories, just so you guys could have kind of a concept picture in your mind of what it could potentially look like. If it was 2 stories, it would obviously kind of be cut down, consistent with this would be the existing basketball court over here. It's more of a 2-story.
So it goes over top of the basketball court?
Nope, it would connect, let me just, I'll
Oh, I'm
quickly
looking at
switch
it
for
there.
you. So, existing basketball court here,
Okay.
the walls would kind of abut. So this is existing.
So it goes from that, where that person's walking in there,
Yep,
all the way over to there?
yeah, this.
No, that's
This is
Sticks.
existing
That's
coffee shop.
Sticks right there.
Yep,
So you're showing, you've taken away the whole parking area and the drop-off?
yep, correct.
You've taken away the drop-off?
Yeah, it's covered by building.
Yeah, that's true.
They've extended the building over the drop-off.
That's where, because that piece of dirt was 7,000 square feet, as I recalled. And I'm sitting here, how can you double that and somehow come up with 25 to 30? You've actually expanded it out.
Yeah.
To the footprint, correct, yep.
Oh,
And how high is this?
This one,
Less than 60.
Bill, I think-
57.
Well, the Sticks is 58, so that one can't be, it looked like it was higher on your
Oh,
other
it's-
elevation. The Six Coffee Shop, the peak of that is
And
58.
it's 5 feet taller, the floor level is 5 feet up,
Uh-huh.
and we're at an elevation where we're 5 feet down. So,
So it is a little taller.
yeah, it's,
Even with your drop in elevation,
Mhm.
drop in landscape elevation.
because we're 14 feet floor to floor, it's 28, 32, 42, and then half of that. So we're close to 58, 59.
Right, but
Yeah.
that's not authorized right now, just so everybody know. And it's not an authorized height. You're a story too high. And that peak of where Sticks Coffee Shop is, it was only supposed to be 55, it's 58, so it's not that big of a deal, this is the peak itself. But even as the elevation drops, it doesn't matter, you're still gotta be from elevation, only 55 feet high. So, okay, this is just a concept anyway, but
so
just
Patrick, why are
keep
you
in mind.
showing 3 stories if the proposal is 2 stories?
just wanted to give the board the context of, we had shown it previously to ProStack, a 3-story. So again, just showing what that space, actually it was 4 stories, so we just wanted to kind of show the context of what it would look like in there if you were to extend it 1 floor.
And we may want to use that extra floor too, so that's the other part of it.
Right, but right now, there is no
Right.
authorization for an extra floor. You know, and right now, there is no authorization for
And
that
so
third
one
floor.
would presume an extra floor would cost $5 to $6 million more, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would factor what's up there, but yeah,
So that 10 to 12 million does not include,
nope.
it's not represented that.
No, it's representative of the 2 floors, kind of
And
transition.
25 to 30,000 feet?
Mhm.
Well, I couldn't imagine though that it would be 50% more because the bulk of your cost is the pool cost. So that
Yep.
3rd floor is going to be a fraction of
And it's raw space, you're exactly right.
Mhm.
It's gonna be what?
that. A
Raw.
fraction of that, yeah.
You're only building walls,
Yeah.
Right.
because you already have the roof on the 2 other stories.
Right.
But the bigger thing for me, though, is that we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Mhm.
That okay, yeah, go ahead.
So what was the height though of that 3-story plan?
Again, I averaged, we're 14 feet floor to floor.
So
And
3
we're
times that.
stories.
42?
So 42, and then we have some roof slope, and then we had the peak, so we were pushing. Again, the medical office building, top of the tower is at 62, and that's what we had this way.
Right, that was a mistake too, but anyway, okay, go ahead. What else are you? I think the bigger thing to keep in mind here, though, is that they took away this is quite a bit different than what's already been approved. You know, because you already have an approved FDP for a building there, and it's in that spot. So we'd have to move away from that already approved FDP for a building and do something totally different, which would be much bigger space, higher space, and also take away the drop-off and the handicap parking. Those are just considerations we'd have to think about.
I think that the drop-off is something that needs to be looked at, but to me, it doesn't, I use that over there a lot, and to me, it's not a big deal to take that drop-off away. But I think, looking at this plan, I mean, I'd like to get away from looking at that it's their FTP that they're providing to us, and think of it as ours, because this is a space that we're trying to do, that we want to add this rec center, this indoor space to the town. So I'd like to see all things here, and if it goes a little higher, that doesn't bother me. And if it comes out further and it costs a little more, that doesn't bother me. So.
Well, I think we're kind of off track here then.
Well, let's let him get through the presentation, then we can have conversations.
Okay.
We're getting into the weeds a little bit. So let's go ahead and hear everything that you've got to give us.
Okay, so open space, I think everybody's familiar with it. We did want to include a couple images. Yes, it does impact the existing parking. So what we started to do was try to take the pro-stack list from March, knowing that those were what the committee, as they were tasked, valued to be the most significant. If you guys remember, the board had asked at the time we took pro-stack on tours. We had this great FAQ sheet where they ended up asking 20-25 questions. So we felt it was important to continue to value that original list. Started working with Bill and his team to say, okay, what realistically can you fit into this space with a reasonable price tag? And right now we felt that $10 million was a good starting point for us. What we didn't want to do was come in and say, build an additional, something that was going to cost us 35 to 40 million that would equal something down at the Richmond 15. So just to give you a little bit of background of how we started the process. But this lower level here shows aquatic space, a little bit smaller lap lane, and actually we've had some dialogue just within the last couple days.
Is it 4 or 2?
It's 4. But I think there's been some consensus even since then that if there's an opportunity to make it a little bit larger, maybe gain a lap lane, that would be beneficial. We had lots of dialogue back and forth about also wanting to make sure that we were representing to the best of our ability the recreational swim component, because we did hear that was important in the survey. And by looking at our usage in town, we know that the South Pool sees significantly more use than the North Pool. So coming up with some kind of representation given the space that meets both needs. Right off the bat, this, regardless of what you would do with the aquatics facility, unless you completely remove the recreational space, it's not going to be a place where you can come in and host large swim meets. You just don't really have the deck space. But what you could do is you could be an outlet for our local swim teams in the off season to come in and swim. You could continue on with swim lessons programs. You could rent the space if the high school needed additional swim space. But again, trying to keep within a reasonable parameter. It's not going to be a 9-foot deep 8-lane pool that is going to be acceptable for a high school swim meet. Now, if we wanted to remove the recreational piece, maybe if that's the direction we want to go, we could explore that. But as it's shown right now, a recreational and competitive with the support spaces. You guys remember on previous conversations, we've talked a lot about making sure that we have lifeguard offices that need line of sight to the pool, having a separate manager's office. We talked a little bit about kind of having the party room and the site configurations, making sure that we built locker rooms that were able to fit the need as well as support the existing need at the sports stable. And this is really a representation of that. We also have If the board's interested, we have some updated drawings that show a slightly different configuration, moving some of the rooms down to the front.
What's capacity for people? Let's say, I mean, you're much tighter here.
On
So,
the
how
lap
many-
pool or the
Yeah,
leisure?
Either, both.
So the way that we do it is you can have about 25 people per lifeguard. And it wouldn't be uncommon during a swim lesson or a swim practice to have 5 to 6 kids per lane. The way that we govern both of our pools is we'll max 5 lifeguards with about 25 people each. And it becomes more of a safety standard than it does an actual physical occupancy. What can you actually get away with isn't necessarily what we feel in town is the safest to do.
And how many lifeguards do we anticipate?
That we're feeling that we'd be staffed at 5, which is, for modeling purposes, our max when we're at the South Pool on our busiest day is 5 guards with 2 managers and a front desk person. And if we were to run into an emergency situation, we feel like we would safely be covered at that point.
Patrick, the leisure pool you have here, what's the size of that compared to the South Pool?
It would be, I don't have an exact, it's smaller. I would have to, run the exact quantities. South Pool's got 3 lap lanes and then a 0 entry with the splashdown. So if you kind of were to, maybe just visually represent kind of 3 lap lanes here with this type of 0 entry. We're not showing a slide here. Slides are great, but they do take a dedicated person at the bottom of the slide and sometimes a dedicated person at the top of the slide. So just for concept purposes, we're showing 0 entry with kind of a lazy river configuration and then maybe like a jetted hot tub configuration in the middle, just for concept.
Yeah, I guess I'm not as keen as previous plans that we saw where there was a smaller leisure pool and a larger pool that could be used for swim meets and all that. So, like the Flyers wanted to use the North Pool in the winter time. To me, this would be the ideal place for them to be, but it doesn't seem like it'd be big enough for what they want.
We did meet with the Flyers, and their comment is that 4 lanes is really their minimum. They actually wouldn't intend to host any winter meets, but they would plan to host practices. They've got about 30 to 40 kids that transition from the summer program to the winter program. But yeah, in concept, the previous version showed a much smaller leisure pool. I think that if that's the direction, it's easy to scale that back.
Yeah.
We're also showing kind of a therapy space here. One of the ideas we talked about was an infinity pool, which is more of the swimming against a constant current to provide more opportunities. Ryland and I had a brief conversation about, do you make one of the lanes for our triathlon swimmers? We know we have a huge triathlon community. We know that we have a really well-attended master swim program. Do you make one of the lanes touch sensitive to where when you touch the wall, the timer goes off, you touch it again and it stops? So for concept, we felt like this was kind of a good starting point, but I really do think that it would come down to, do we want that more competitive piece? I think it's easy to scale it back. If there was a bigger push for the community piece, then I think this is probably a decent proportion here.
It just seems like the casual part would be used just mostly on weekends, perhaps Saturdays. During the week, I couldn't imagine there'd be, because of school in session, they'd be used that much. Even in the summer times, they'd probably be outside of the North and South Pool. But if you had a larger pool for laps and maybe competitive swimming, that would be used more often, especially during the week in the morning hours. Didn't we hear from PVSD that they would use this pool? The Monarch High School swim team would use this pool if it's big enough? Didn't we hear that?
Anybody would use it if we built it, they will come.
Yeah.
So, but they don't want to pay for it or build it. Boulder Valley School District said that,
maintain it.
or maintain it.
But
They
I'm worried
won't
that
build it, but they
at 3
would come.
lanes, But I'm worried
Yeah,
at
3
3
or 4.
lanes.
Yeah,
we
we
can-
could build that and they may not come, but if
Right.
it was bigger, I think they
You
would
could
come.
go.
But we're not building it for them.
Okay,
because
let's-
it doesn't
let's
make
go-
sense.
For the
Okay.
community.
Let's,
Okay.
let's get out of the
Well,
pool.
but no, I think
and-
that's an important point, though, that I have a different view of that. Yes, it is for our community, but why wouldn't we want to build something that brings more people into the town center? Because when they come here, especially if it's during regular business hours, they're gonna go into other businesses in town and spend money, and that's something that we want. So I'd say let's not build this just for our community, let's build this for the region.
Well, we build it, the region will come.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's keep.
So want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions. So moving over to upper level, an expanded cardio and strength area. For those of you that saw the ProStack presentation a couple months back, we talked about just kind of popping a hole in the side of the existing fitness and carrying that over. Adding a large community room here, active adult space, a lounge area, and then just some of the required office spaces. So fairly straightforward.
Go to the third floor if it were to be built, what would be up there?
We
We're
don't
not
have a
showing
layout-
it.
We don't have a layout for that, yeah.
I think whether it become more maker space or, you know, we've always had that concept, and I've got the presentation from the civic space discussion. If you wanted to start to kind of pick and move civic spaces over, maybe a dedicated child area, maybe a wet classroom where you can do some more art and craft. In wanting to kind of keep it at the 2 floors for cost reasons and knowing that we would also have to look at this in context of the greater civic space, we did leave a lot of that in that other civic space area.
Patrick, one of your original designs, you had kind of a gas station type approach with big rolling doors, and it was set back, and the second level was back a little bit further. Why did you go away from that to?
And actually, this was something very insightful from my conversation with Bill. Is it actually added a significant amount of cost the more we contoured that building around, and trying to rely on the existing infrastructure that's there. Kind of bang for the buck was keep it somewhat square.
I like it better.
Use the existing space.
Patrick, would you summarize what we're giving up between the 2 options? You showed the Colton and the Haslam option, and this option, 2 stories. What are we giving up in terms of features?
If you're talking about just the dedicated 2 floors, I mean, obviously you're giving up quite a bit because you wouldn't have basketball, you wouldn't have the running track, you wouldn't have a climbing wall. But when we started to work on this and took ProStack on the tour, we wanted, and I actually have a slide for it, we wanted to look at what we could do to complement the existing facility infrastructure, knowing that if the board wanted to push forward, that we could probably come up with some kind of creative membership that allowed you access to the existing space plus the new space. So if you're looking at the building holistically, I actually think you gain more at this building because it's got the ice, it's got the turf, it's got the basketball courts, it's got restaurant space. If you're just looking at the 2 floors, I think that, you know, you lose the basketball space, the climbing wall, the track, the dedicated, you know.
So this is a nice segue, because what I don't understand is how this sharing would work.
Mm-hmm.
So how would it work?
So we chatted a lot about this internally, and I think what jumped out to us in our internal conversations and what I mentioned previously kind of during the ProStack presentation is, I think there are things that the town is really great at managing. I think aquatics-wise, it may make sense for us to manage the aquatics piece of it. We've got staff that's already certified in it. We've got a pipeline of great lifeguards. We have chemical contracts in place. We have operation plans in place. But it may not make sense for us to bring on a whole new staff to run fitness if Ryland and his team already have a great repertoire of fitness programming and personal training. Something that Luke in our conversations brought up is he's got an unbelievable facility management team already in place. So we took a step back and said, what is each entity good at? What could each entity bring to the table to potentially bring the cost down? And I think that that's where we started to look at this partnership operationally. I don't know that it would make sense for us to staff up a full-time fitness supervisor and bring on a bunch of contractual personal trainers if there's already a handful of them in the building. I think we could potentially look at some kind of revenue share, or Impact leases that space back to the town, pays the town for that space as we would with any other kind of contractor. So we really started to look at those type of efficiencies and saying, okay, you know, is it ideal that there's only one basketball court that's programmed? No, it's not the most ideal situation in the world, but is there a court there that we could creatively program around and create some time that residents could use? Absolutely, and the town
So
wouldn't have to cover that
That's
cost
what
to
I'm
build it.
interested in, is from a resident standpoint, if we're gonna call this our
Mhm.
fitness center, right? Our rec center, et cetera, et cetera. From a resident standpoint, how does it work to serve our residents and presumably also serve the customers
Okay.
of Impact and Sports Stable?
Mhm.
How does that work together?
Right. So we went down that path, and I might even rely on Rylan a little bit. Half of your membership, is it safe to say, is Superior residents? I don't want to overstate it. More than half.
Yeah, I'd say
Um,
between half and 75%
Are-
Superior residents so far.
So we really started to kind of look at this of saying, you know, maybe you have a tiered membership. If you're only interested in fitness, you're obviously not interested in paying to go over and have ice time on Luke's ice. So a tiered membership that allowed an entry level for drop-in fitness. And then if you wanted, you know, some kind of personal training, much like you would at another facility, you could pay a fee for that. You could pay a flat fee to have access to the entire building during open drop-in time. Something that we did as staff, ProStack had several great questions about, well, isn't the building always programmed? So that's a great question. So I had my staff go out and talk to Louisville, Erie, Broomfield, and Boulder and say, what percentage of your time is scheduled as opposed to being open? And it's fairly comparable. You know, those gym spaces also have recreational programs in there. They also have pickleball in there. They also have adult volleyball in there. So we're really doing
But customers the residents of that community are
Mhm.
using it during the program times.
Right.
What I see is different here, for example, ice time.
Uh-huh.
It's the teens who might be coming from miles around that are occupying the ice, except for the, you know, some of it's Superior teams, but we're equating apples and oranges possibly here. Because when I go to Louisville Rec, I can choose to be in that class.
Mhm.
Whereas I can't choose to be on the ice when, I don't know, Erie's teams are playing hockey over here.
Right.
You know, so we got to be sure we're.
I will say
doing
that
apples
I
to
think if
apples.
you visited Louisville Rec Center when they had youth basketball going on, you wouldn't be able to access the gymnasium as a citizen, and you would likely run into the same issue of having non-residents participating in that league. But you're right, and I think that that's something that as we've had our discussions, we also as a town haven't created a lot of opportunities or needs for that space. Something I think Rylan mentioned early on is the ice time and the room time tends to get prioritized based upon who wants to use it. Well, right now, we're not currently offering any opportunities broadly to the public that's drawing them over there. And this slide does try to speak to that a little bit. You know, I think even my staff over the years have gone into it saying, well, is this really just this elite space? Is it something that's only for competitive athletes? And you know, we dug around and we asked Luke and his team to provide all their programming. We asked Ryland and his team to provide all their programming. And we started to look at those programs compared to what you would offer at a Louisville Rec Center, Broomfield Rec Center. And what we found is 80% of what they offer is really kind of open to everybody. regardless of your participation, skill level, age, or prior experience. Where I think we're all in agreement that we haven't done a great job is we haven't done all that great of a job articulating that or marketing that, which I think with a partnership could be improved on. But a lot of times, and Rylan, you tend to throw out the statistic best, talking about your business model and your reliance on the recreational piece. And would you mind kind of just quickly giving, I know you beat it into me like a dead horse, but.
Yeah. Ryland, do you mind coming up to the table and probably pick up your voice a little bit better? Thank you.
So, with the size of the space that we've built and programmed, I've thrown the number out to Patrick that about 85% of what we do is geared towards a recreational athlete, meaning most of our programs are geared towards youth athletes and kids programs, from basically starting them around 8. We have a kids camp program that goes as early as 5, and then that will take them all the way up until, when you start talking about an elite athlete, you're really not talking about a kid until they get to be about a junior in high school. So from everything from 5 to a junior in high school, we would consider recreation. Now you have different levels of that, but we have a series of tiered programs that accommodate that group of kid. When you get to about a junior and we start creating those elite level travel programs where you're trying to get recruited and go to college and so on and so forth, that is about 10% of our business. That, the college athlete and the professional athlete, which are few and far between. The funny joke with professional athletes is they're all broke until they get there, and then once they get there, they don't want to pay for anything, and they got their contract, right? So we don't really base a model off of the elite athlete and the professional. We really, in order to fill the facility, and I know from Luke's perspective and mine, it is the recreational athlete that's gonna fill up our building.
So, again, moving on, and I want to make sure, being mindful of time, and I may rely on Paul and the finance department here a little bit, and I think the bulk of the conversation that we heard from the board the last time we kind of went down this path is, so what does this take to build? What does it take to operate? And what does it look like if the town funds it? What are some other creative solutions that were out there? You notice in the cover memo, well, let me back up a little bit. Timing, I think from Luke's perspective and Ryland's perspective, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is paramount. I think that there was a general sense that if we're waiting for some type of election, that wasn't an ideal situation for these guys, knowing that they're under construction now and there's an opportunity to take advantage of current construction costs and mobilization that's already over there. So we wanted to come up with a creative solution, and what that ended up being is there this opportunity out there that these guys could put together an investment group. They could upfront the cost to build the facility and then work some type of situation with the town where the town's a long-term lease tenant. We own it at the end of a set amount of time, and we go from there, as opposed to how we've traditionally looked at it, which is the town covers the construction cost and the operating cost. So we wanted to present a scenario. We've made some assumptions, just having basic conversations with Luke and Ryland and their team, and saying, okay, if we're looking at a construction cost of $10 million, a down payment of $2 million, you're financing $8 million, you guys can kind of read on here. There still is a subsidy that the town would have to fill, and that's this kind of lower number here. So with that, my assumption is this would be kind of the heart of the conversation, and I did ask Paul to sit in and graciously sit in. We've also run a very similar scenario to what it would look like if we were to fit the bill for the construction and the operation on the Town 15 site as well.
So this is predicated on about 1,550
Yes.
resident
Correct.
users. And I didn't quite understand how they were all broken down in there. You had individuals, families,
Right.
kids, but you had this first one here that so tell us a little bit of the math there. Given that we have a new Lakeshore,
Mhm.
I know we're all getting from, I am at least, I've gotten 2 big brochures in the mail from them. We've got Louisville Rec. We've got individual yoga classes and all that kind of stuff. Tell us your confidence in that 1,550 number.
I think realistically, looking at 1,500 residents for a population of our size in terms of penetration and rate into a rec center is fairly realistic. We were cautious not to go too high above that, knowing that there is competition in town. What we did is we looked at the previous Lakeshore analysis. We looked at our previous numbers that we had collected from Louisville. We looked at the survey, and then we chatted with Rylands about his existing base. We also looked at our swimming pool usage and said, we feel like 1,500 is a reasonable amount of membership. It is just, it's a best guess. We tried to use the tools that we had available to come up with that number. I know that at the Lakeshore discussion, I think we were floating around 2,000, you know, was kind of the number that from town that was attending. We are making some assumptions that if you build this kind of facility and make it accessible to the public, that you would, either due to service level or price point, get people to jump ship one way or the other. We did a little bit of research and saying, okay, is there some magic number out there? Is it safe to say that 10% of your population is going to participate in some kind of rec activity? I think the greatest indicator for us was saying, well, we could look at our database and we know the type of usage that we have in town for the North Pool and the South Pool. And assuming that you would build another aquatics facility that had kind of the best of both worlds, that those people would become members based on that kind of thinking. But it's not a hard and fast number. It really is an assumption, but I think a pretty realistic assumption.
But why would you make that assumption? The people who are using the North Pool and the South Pool are getting it for free. These people would be paying $46 a month.
Right.
So that seems like not a logical assumption that the people who use the pool in the summertime and don't pay anything would necessarily pay $46 a month to have access to the pool.
Well, this is more than a pool, though.
I'm just saying, based on
Yeah.
that statement, I don't think you could assume that the people who use the pool.
I think that that's valid. I think what we wanted to do was to have the dialogue and say,
Yeah, no, I just don't think
You
you
didn't-
could make that
I
assumption.
think it's right, so for $46 a month, you know, you could, I mean, what you're getting that you wouldn't currently have is a pool from Impact. So you could, for roughly, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 bucks a month, you can get some nice membership at Impact and have access to the basketball court when it's not otherwise programmed, all the weights, all the treadmills. And so this is this partnership with Impact where I'm going to be paying another $46 and I get equipment that frankly is probably not going to be as nice or as well maintained as Impact. And I get access to a pool that only has 3 lanes. So just to be clear, I encourage this study. I think it's really interesting. I think there's a lot of data, a lot of information, and obviously a lot of work. It is really well presented. To me, this feels like it's been skinnied down so much, and it's trying to be too much for the relatively small footprint that we have. So when I see 3 lanes and maybe it's going to be 4, I'm kind of underwhelmed by that. When I hear about, you know, the financials.
This is 4, you said.
you count the outer 2 swimming against this, you know, you would have a lane and then you'd be able to swim against the wall. Yep.
Okay.
Narrow lane.
Yeah, it's just, you know, I had sort of hoped that, can you go back to the slide, to the, right, I go to the second level.
Yep.
You know, okay, we open up walls between Impact and our space, and we have access to their equipment. that to me felt like a potential partnership and something that would be viable, but I see firm walls competing against a gym right next, I mean, this is a gym, right? I mean, this has a couple kid areas, but I don't see anything here that has me super excited. Just a preview. I mean, I still have some questions, but the preview at the highest level after seeing the presentation, I don't think this necessarily does it for us, for me personally.
On the programming for the gym, what Patrick and I talked about was that being impacts additional space. And we would run all of the fitness. We would program it, we would staff it, we would hire it. That would be an extension of what we already have. We would probably tweak it a little bit, put another studio in there, program it a little bit different, have a dedicated cardio area and a dedicated strength area, and then we would, Impact would rent that space from the town as a source of revenue.
Right.
And then we would keep, basically, we would try to divide up a membership to where we would be responsible for the fitness component of it. The town would be responsible for the pool, locker room, and then we would kind of share in that space.
Yeah, I still think there's something there, right? I mean, what you guys need, what we need desperately is aquatics, right? I mean, that's number one on most of the surveys that I've seen. Everybody keep me honest, right? What you guys need is more space, and you underbuilt your locker rooms.
And underbuilt the locker rooms.
Right, you underbuilt the locker rooms, and you need more space, offices, physical training, everything, right? So at the highest level, is there a partnership where we come at this with a bunch of capital, you come at this with some promises and/or capital, the pool gets built, I won't say who's forwarding the capital, the pool gets built, the second floor on the pool gets built, and the pool and some amenities around the pool, you know, safety things, right? The second floor gets built, and then we start sharing. There is no wall between Impact and the second floor of the rec center. That to me starts to feel like something that's possible, but I don't see those designs, or, you know, maybe another work session between ProStack and you guys might get something to me. I don't know, Mark, we haven't heard from, you know, a couple of people haven't talked, but it's just really appreciative of the work, and I want to underscore that. But I'm kind of overwhelmed. This to me feels like, again, trying to do too much in too small a space, and frankly, nobody's going to be well served by this.
We actually made some revisions to the drawing. We didn't make them in time to get it into the presentation, but we adjusted for more. We moved some of the mechanical over. We adjusted for more lanes, so we got 5 lanes in there now. You have better access and flow to the locker rooms and the Impact Sports. You still have your recreation pool, and then to your point, we did knock down some walls and make it feel a little bit more open on the second floor, and probably enclose just the studio, but you certainly want it to be open and have a good flow between one building and the other, and kind of have that seamless as well.
That bottom patio has overhead doors where people can go in and out during the summer, and you can actually have, you know, some deck space and some sun, so it could be used during warmer months when you'd be out there. So, you know, the floor plan, if you guys are getting bogged down in the whole floor plan piece right now, that can be adjusted, it can be changed. There's more space in this building than what's shown here. You know, we haven't put anything on the 3rd floor yet. It's really the concept. Do you guys really, you guys have, you know, I sat down with Patrick, he gives me a list of your 20 top things in you know, what the town of Superior residents want. And we've knocked off 18 of those things with this piece. You guys won't have to pay for it. You get it at the end of the day, and it satisfies all of your residence pieces. So it's kind of like, this is almost this is a good offer for the town, or you go and spend your $35 million and build exactly what you want, and realistically probably never get built.
I do want to spend a little bit of time with Paul up here. talking about how the business arrangement would work. But first, on the pool, for example, you don't have a pool now, so are you intending to use the pool for your clients?
We would rent space from you if you guys wanted us to, or if you had space to rent. If you didn't, then we wouldn't.
And how would you use that? I mean, what would that bring to your business?
It would,
The
we
pool?
would just have some swim teams that would be
Okay.
part of our stuff that we've got going over there. But this stuff in here. it
This
doesn't-
isn't like
doesn't really-
therapy
it-
for patients and all that kind of stuff?
Not really. I mean,
Okay.
it's,
It
you know, there's a
could,
little,
but-
it could be, but it's not gonna be really used a ton. I mean, what this helps is it helps impact, but
Mhm.
it brings more traffic to the building in general, which is always a big plus. But from the sports table side of things, there's really not a whole lot in here for us.
So
that-
let's
that
go
we're at.
back to your first thing, it helps impact. So I'd like to know how it helps impact, and I'd like to know how it helps the sports table. What is the symbiotic relationship here?
From our perspective, the way we built our facility, and we're like I said before, we're sports performance and we're really geared towards the kids, we put a capacity on our memberships at about 600 members. We're currently at 450. So we're almost at our capacity and reached our potential, and I don't think that that's big enough to serve what we're trying to serve here, this community. And if the town is considering building something down the street and diverting traffic that way, I thought this would be a good option to put that traffic into the building and be able to increase our membership base. I think we can get 2,000 in here, which when I was talking with Lakeshore, when they were transitioning, they had about 4,500, and 2,000 of them were Superior residents. I think Lakeshore's number, Lifetime's number, they're trying to reach 10,000 members, and they're going to be about double the price. And we could pretty much have everything that Lifetime has, minus a few TVs and a nail salon, for half the price, and give the town residents a better option to stay in Superior, spend their money in Superior, and have a rec center that they call their own.
So in the next 15 minutes or so, I would like to get to this question of do we, as a board, support this concept? And there's a lot of details here. We're not going to get any of them figured out tonight, but what we do need to get figured out is the concept, because just like the discussions back in 2015, where we had a proposal, we had to give them some feedback as to whether do we move forward with this or do we not. And we're diving deep on some issues here, but we really need to get to the heart of the, do we
Yeah, I
support the
agree.
concept?
So let me just ask a clarifying question on that. So if you have 450 members today and 50 to 75% are from Superior, so what would that mean for so let's assume an individual member is $50, and I know it's not exactly, but it's $50. That individual member now wants to be, okay, there's this pool that's built, I want access to the pool and the upstairs from the pool, and I also want access to my regular membership. What is that? Is that person paying 50 and then another 40?
We envisioned one membership that covers both sides, and our membership is at 65 based on 600 members.
Right.
So if we have the potential to reach 2,000 members, now our price can come down as to what we need just for the fitness component to roughly $25 to $35.
All right, so that was not clear to me. All right, so let's just talk about that. So now we're talking about having 2,000 total members for both this building that we've built, which is connected and interoperable with your building, all around 65. Because then that to me feels like, all right, yes, I would, if I'm paying 50 now, I would pay 65 to be able to lock my clothes in a locker and to have access to a pool a couple times. But I wouldn't pay, 50 and 40.
Right. No, it would be one membership, and then I think there could be additional add-ons if you wanted to, ice, golf, turf, some of the other amenities.
Well, it's more, so it's
But the guaranteed 100% access is going to be the fitness and the pool. You get it. there's not a time in the day that we're open that the members couldn't access those two pieces.
Because of your closed membership, or, you'll have a certain, but I gotta ask a question, there's two contradictions here. Is okay? So we haven't talked about the business side of it, which I really want to understand, the financial side of it, how do we get it built? Because I heard you say, Kevin, that if we build it, and I heard Luke say you don't have to pay anything for it, and you get it at the end. So there's a contradiction here. We are paying for it as a town. The way it's proposed here is that you all finance it, the way what I look at, and, create the loan and the advance payment and all that kind of stuff, but we as a town end up
Correct, you would
paying
be
for it.
leasing it from us.
For the full
for the-
$10 million.
For the period of the time that you wanted to set whatever your payments that you wanted, and at the end of the day, it'd be yours.
Right,
So-
but we're
so
paying the
essentially-
full $10 to $12 million. It's not a 50-50 like the operating costs are. They're not shared. So, and that's where I kind of got off track here a little bit. I thought we were talking about this as a shared opportunity
Well,
or a
that's
partnership.
when you asked me about the third floor, I said, because I think the third floor might be ours, and we might put more basketball courts in there, or
Mhm.
that sort of thing. So that would be our portion that we'd pay for, that you wouldn't be leasing. So
Mhm.
the way that we kind of broke this down is, you guys would lease the first two floors, okay? You would
Mhm.
essentially, we'd figure out what it costs to build that, whatever it is at the end of the day. You figure out how long you needed the payments to be so that it makes sense financially from the town's perspective, and then at the end of the day, it's yours. If we need to use pieces of your building, and if they're available, then we'll pay you to rent them, just like you'd rent them to.
So do
anyone else.
you, I know you own Boulder Valley Ice building or sports stable, but who owns the Impact Sports building?
Dr. Sheen and I own 2 bricks.
Okay, so you have a building now that your group owns the hockey and the
Turf.
And the turf.
Golf, and
Right,
basically
but that
everything
building,
beyond-
the big long,
Yeah, the
this
big one.
2 football fields along the
Exactly,
building.
exactly.
And then you own the building, or Dr. Sheen owns the building in the front. And then now you're proposing that the town would own another portion of the building that you already have an FDP for to build.
Mhm.
That we then take over that and build something totally different in the front.
Possibly has open walls and open access.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Which
if
is
we're doing
even
it
harder
over
to
20,
get-
25, or
Yeah.
30 years, who's all gonna be around after that? I mean, I'm not gonna be here,
Well,
but, you
the
know,
the whole point of this financing was, first of all, we didn't think you guys would be able to come up with 10 or 12 million bucks without a bond issue, without going through.
well, we can't
all
even
of
do it
the-
here, because there's a $500,000 a year shortfall. So we're gonna have to get that from someplace.
Well, no, I get that,
Yeah.
and maybe Paul can speak to this a
Yeah.
little better, because he did the analysis from your standpoint, but
Mhm.
what we were trying to come up with is some creative solutions, so that you did not have to come up with the nut up front, and you could get your rec center in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I think that putting something like this in that space, which is always what was planned to be in there, when you first came with your FDP, this is, but on a smaller version, but this is basically
Yeah,
what was
we had a
planned.
one-floor safe swim type
It
pool,
was
which was,
2 levels though, but we
no,
can,
the pool was one.
the pool was 1, granted.
Yes.
But so that was already FDP'd, and there were some of those things that were supposed to be in there, but I know a lot of water has passed under a bridge. But where I'm at though is, I thought we were having this discussion, that you were coming to us to think about how you could build that space out, which you're gonna build out anyway, or you have an FDP to, and how we could
We're not-
participate.
At this point, we're not building that space out.
Okay, so
right
now we're saying that we're gonna build it out.
Well,
Okay, hold
The
on.
proposal.
We're now down to 10 minutes
Okay.
left, and we've got to, I mean, there's people that hadn't said a word here, and so we need to get the pulse of everybody. I'm gonna start with saying I am 100% behind this concept. This is brilliant, and I think we should continue these discussions. This, to me, is a way to enhance a facility that's already a success in the community, provide the needs that, and the desires the residents have, and get it done quickly, and not wait for, not have to wait for an enormous amount of time to pass. So I'm 100% behind proceeding.
So I think that this is exactly the type of like out-of-the-box thinking that we need to have, because people want a rec center, but they don't want to pay for it, right? And if I had 35 million bucks laying around, it would be great. Sure, we could go build our own rec center, but realistically, by the time we actually go to the voters, we don't know if it's going to pass. You know, we're looking 4 years out, best case scenario. And I'm not convinced that, you know, building our own rec center down in the Richmond 15 is the best thing for our town. I mean, we've got Lifetime down the street, we have the sports stable here, we've got Louisville Rec Center. I don't know if there's necessarily a need for another independent freestanding building diverting traffic from all these different facilities. I think here, if we want the town center to be successful, it makes sense to try to drive as much traffic as we can. And if we can provide, you know, aquatics in a more cost-effective and in a shorter time frame, I think we'd be foolish to not jump at that opportunity. In terms of the concept plans, I mean, I agree with what Chris was saying about, you know, the need for additional lap pools and who's going to be using it. However, like, we have so many kids in this town, I do think we need some adequate sized rec pool as well. But I like what I'm seeing here, you know, with a little opener floor plan. I'm sure we can figure all that out as we get, you know, further down the road in terms of the design. I think if we're going to be building something here, it makes sense to throw a third story on there, and if we can get some additional amenities, that seems like it's a smart thing to do when we're building it. So I'm all for this. I think we should continue the discussions. I like the notion that we're not fronting the construction costs, and if we're entering into a 20 or 30-year lease to pay it back, it's a way for us to do this without a tremendous amount of, you know, upfront capital costs or risk, really. So, and I think the voters, I think the residents would be behind this. I am not certain that the residents would be behind building our own rec center. So if we actually think about, like, what do we actually want here? Do we want to actually deliver indoor aquatics? If that's what we want, this may be the only way we can do it.
So,
Let me go with Sandy.
No, let Kevin go ahead.
this, you guys have already built our rec center for the town, right? We didn't pay for it, but, you know, there's probably 10% of us use that building as our rec center now. You know, it's nice to be able to work out, get a cup of coffee, grab a beer, run into friends. It's becoming the center of the community, and so now we need to sort of finish it, and we need to help you finish it. I think this is great work. From my perspective, again, I think what you guys need in there is better locker rooms and more space. What we as a town need is some aquatics. We obviously don't agree whether or not, you know, we're going to have to negotiate around how many the depth and amount of lanes versus some recreational pool, but we can get there. If we could get this done for an incremental cost of $300,000 to $500,000 to the town per year with no material upside risk, then I'm all for it.
That's operations.
Right, but as I see, I think there's some significant risk getting beyond $300,000 to $500,000 because I don't, you know, 1,500 members I'm worried about. So I think spending some more time workshopping this, trying to get to some type of non-binding term sheet that has some specifics around the type of partnership and relationship and what happens if we don't deliver the members, having some specifics around there would be great. But again, from my perspective, going beyond $500,000 a year for what effectively is a aquatic center is risky. So, but great work, you know, and let's continue to work this.
Sandy and then Chris.
I also commend you guys and Patrick for working hard on coming up with some out-of-the-box thinking, because, you know, I'm one of the people who believes we need better indoor recreational facilities. There are two things that I want to see before I say, yes, I'm ready to go forward with this. And the first thing is, and I've said this repeatedly, I want to have a better sense of what we're looking at with the indoor civic space in Superior Town Center and how this juxtaposes with that. We are not just looking at an aquatic center here. The recreation program is going to be a lot more things. It's going to be activities for seniors, and we're basically just blowing that off. And I want to understand how all of that fits into this or fits into the civic space, which we also are going to have a commitment to do something with, whether it's 40,000 feet or 20,000 feet. So I like what I'm seeing. I think it's a great way for us to solve a problem, but you don't have me yet. So we need, I say we keep pushing on this. I understand you guys are under some time constraints and you don't want to see it go to a ballot issue. I don't want it to go to a ballot issue. If we can come up with the thing that ProStack has envisioned for our town, we may never get what they envision, but we're not there yet. We're talking recreation, we're talking workout space, and we're talking a pool. And I really want to understand how we're going to attack those other things that are important for a recreation center, because this is not what this is yet.
Well, we're just really kind of trying to determine if we want to take this a whole other step tonight. I think what would be programmed there and what kind of rooms we would have in there, that would come at a later date if we decide we want to continue to move forward. I'm 100% behind this. I think it makes the most sense for our town to have it in this space here for a couple of reasons. One, we've already got a huge recreational center there right now, and this just adds to it, adds the things that this town wants more. Two, we want to drive more people into the town center, and by providing these kind of amenities in there, he's going to do that, both with our residents and with residents from Louisville and Lafayette and Broomfield, which we want. We want them to spend time in the town center. If we had 2,000 residents spending $200 a month or whatever that was at Lakeshore, at the same time as using our pools in town, we're certainly going to have numbers like that at this place. So to me, it just makes the most sense. Besides that, not putting it on Richmond, I think, makes a lot of sense as well, because that leaves that space for additional uses that could, I don't think we'll ever see homes there, but I mean, why couldn't we put ball fields, and maybe there's partnerships, with ball fields and multi-purpose fields and all that. So I think that we're really maximizing the use of our space in town by having the recreational needs here, the indoor space, and more outdoor space on the Richmond 15. One thing we haven't talked about in the financing, which we talked about in the past, was why wouldn't we use TIF dollars towards this? If there's going to be some financing that we would pay over years, why wouldn't we maybe take that option, but then when the TIF dollars become available, pay our portion off with TIF, whether it's $3 million.
You're talking TIF or
TIF?
10 million? TIF can't be used.
We can't, TIF from where? Where would the TIF be from?
Why couldn't we use part of the $10 million that we
Yeah,
Public
the 10.
infrastructure.
You're talking about 10, not the TIF.
the $10 million that we have allocated
That's
towards.
not out of TIF though, but yes, okay. So you're not saying take TIF from the tax increment financing,
The
that's
$10 million
for the Superior
that's
Metro
allocated to
districts?
recreational space in town,
Okay.
or civic space. So why wouldn't we use some of that to pay our portion off on that? So I think this makes the most sense in the world from a financial perspective, but also a user perspective.
Okay.
I would like to add something here. I am extremely uncomfortable with the main goal here of trying to avoid a referendum.
Mhm.
We're talking $10 million, and we're talking thus far about avoiding voter input on this, and I cannot condone that. I think this is such a huge chunk of change and such a serious commitment that it should go to the voters, and we should not be here trying to figure out a way not to go to the
I don't
voters.
think that's what we're trying to figure out. I mean, that's not, I mean, it's these,
Well, all
to
I
me.
heard tonight was that this is a way not to go to the voters, and
Hey,
we
so to
want it
be
done
clear,
in
I'm
such a
not-
time frame that we couldn't.
I'm not
Yeah.
I don't have an opinion at this point whether, so I think this, I took this meeting as take the pulse of this board and have a collaborative conversation around whether or not this is a humdinger of an idea. I think that you've heard from a few of us, it's a humdinger of an idea. Now, the next gates to execute on that idea, we have not discussed, and whether or not I think it should be a referendum or not, I've not discussed that.
Not
By
weighed in.
no means
Yeah,
am I
but
trying
some
to get
people
in.
have weighed in. So anyway, I just want to be on the side of this is serious money, serious budget impact, and it deserves to go to the voters. What we are building here is not a community center. A community center had rec components and it had community components. It's a central gathering space that brought people of all ages for other things than working out. And so we're redefining the amenities seriously here. And I have to say, I think the town is ready for a serious community center. It does not necessarily preclude also expanding some of these workout amenities here if they're already too small, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm not ready to give up the next phase of growth for this town, which is to have serious amenities that are developed for this town and will work for this town for 10, 15, and 20 years out. I don't see this, I'm with your original comments, Kevin. It seems too small, it seems too crunched.
Too expensive.
We're trying to make it work. I am not at all comfortable with how this business relationship, how we share with each other and all that kind of stuff. So I'll go down the pike with whoever, but I do want to say I want this to go to the voters, and I want it to be weighed against this long process we've had of a full-service community center, and to be very clear along the way of what we're getting and what we're not getting.
Okay,
One question.
Okay, we're over.
I had to ask a question. Does this replace our commitment for the civic space, to build a civic space?
No, I don't think it does. And
So then we'd have two times the $10 million requirement.
Okay, but
basically.
it's part of a discussion we're gonna have to continue. What I'm hearing tonight is definitely support to continue the conversation, and I think you've got kind of an idea of where we're, where each board member is, feeling about the issue, but definitely appreciate the out-of-the-box thinking, as Mark said, and look forward to continuing the discussion. So,
I'm sorry.
yeah, before we break down, we need to, so don't leave when we're done. We're going to bring in the youth leadership, or the youth corps, and recognize those
So we're
kids.
breaking down the tables? We're doing
Before,
that?
we're doing that before.
Yes, Patrick, we could just line them up right here.
That'd be
Let's
good.
bring them in.
Line them up.
Line them up, line them up.
I'll make
Thank
mine.
you, Roger.
Thank you.
We do have to have a discussion instead of just having a presentation and then go
Yeah,
away.
Because
there's no.
how does staff know how to proceed? We
Yeah.
need
Yeah.
to follow this up with
They
the
heard
discussion.
Well, that's-
7 different opinions,
Right.
and we've given them no
So
consensus.
when can
and I
we
think we've
schedule
got
to have a
some.
real discussion
Well,
about
I
this?
think the point of this was, come back or don't come back. I mean, that to me is, and so what
Well,
I'm
but
hearing
where-
is, yes, come
Come
back.
back with
But with
what,
what?
though? So, we have different opinions of what we were going to be
Well,
discussing tonight.
we've run out of time.
Well, then that's what I'm saying, when are
We
we
need more
going to
time.
have the
don't know.
discussion scheduled? Yeah, we need to have a discussion.
Low 10.
Okay, that would be good. But we need to have a discussion, not just
We've got-
Start on the side, Tommy. Come on up here.
in a very quiet room.
It's going to be hard taking pictures if we're in there. How about we get out of the way?
I feel like I'm just in the way of this.
I know, it's like, why don't we just break it down and do it as part of the regular session?
Is it ready? Okay. Maya? Adam? Hunter? Drew? Luke? Eva. Emma? Jackson? Grace? Nathan?
No, we got a couple more there.
Wendy? Judy? Adam?
So are you guys with Youth Corps? You could step on down. So what you didn't realize is we just signed you up for next year.
That's good. That's good.
So we're here tonight to recognize Youth Corps. Patrick, why don't you give, or
Yeah, Tom,
give
what?
give a little.
So basically, the Youth Corps is all the basically residents in town, those kids. This is basically their first full-time paying job in the summer. And we do everything from crusher fine trail repairs to building brand new trails, to fence painting, wood painting. Basically, anything that I ask them to do, they do for us.
Lots of Russian olive trees.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
They took down lots of Russian olive trees for us.
They removed about 52 of them this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
And then the connector trail from Coal Creek Crossing to Mayhopper Single Tree was one of their
Nice.
big projects. So lots of great work every year. We rely on them heavily every year.
So we wanted to recognize them with a certificate and spare you from sitting through all the
Yes.
first part of our
Yes.
meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Photos, anybody want to do photos, more photos?
We need to take pictures. We'll take some and we can send it back out.
Okay, eyes on Patrick.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Great. Got it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
Do they come back again next year, or some of them?
Some
return?
We've had
We had 8 returns.
Good evening. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Town of Superior Board of Trustees, the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Board of Directors, the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Board of Directors, the Superior Metropolitan Districts Number 2, Number 3, and the Superior Urban Renewal Authority Board of Commissioners for Monday, November 27th, 2017. Could we all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Thanks. Shannon, could we get the roll call, please?
Okay. Mayor Clint Polson,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sandy Pennington,
Here.
Trustee Rita Dozal,
Here?
Sandy Hammerly,
Here.
Chris Hansen,
Here.
Mark Lasis,
Here.
Kevin Ryan,
Here.
Town Manager Matt Magley,
Here.
Town Attorney Kendra Carberry.
Here.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda. Do we have anyone that has any changes to the agenda, or could I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Trustee Hansen, second by Trustee Lasis. All those in favor? Passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, next is reports, questions, and issues. Who'd like to start?
I'll start.
Chris?
I don't have much. I did want to follow up on the work session. Trustee Pennington had, at the end, made a comment, and I wanted to reply back. The comment was, she had felt that some board members didn't want to take our discussions to the public, and it sounded like we wanted to do something without voter approval. And my reason not to go to the voters was clearly because I don't think that a $35 million referendum would pass. And I think that it would just slow the progress down on building a recreation center. I certainly think that we need to get voter approval or resident approval of something of this magnitude, but I honestly, I think that it would pass anyway. So if there were a way of doing it without having to wait for the next election next November, I think that would be good, because I think the longer we wait, the tougher it's going to be to get something built. And then I also want to just follow up. Did we give staff direction that we want to continue looking into this?
Yes.
Because I think there was some misunderstanding with staff that they weren't sure. So the direction is that we want to continue looking at this space and maybe even at the Richmond 15. Is that what we're hearing, or focus on this space across the street?
I think focus it.
Okay.
I think my comment is, I want to see more than this. I want to see this and the civic space for Superior Town Center, and until I have some sort of a vision on both spaces, I won't feel comfortable moving forward.
What I want to see,
Okay, why don't we,
Yeah,
let's
I'll
go.
do it in my
Yeah,
reports.
let's
Yeah.
do.
That's all I have.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Sandy?
regarding the continuation of that, what I want to see is the Richmond 15 proposal, which is pretty much our all-in type of amenity, compared to what we foresee being doable here at the, in conjunction with Impact and Sports Stable, and the civic component that would be in the town center. We've got to get our arms around this whole aspect, because largely what we're seeing in tonight's presentation is the rec and workout amenities, and that is simply a component of a broader community center type of amenity. So I need to see all those aspects put together. And I do believe we've got to get voter weigh-in, and how you get voter weigh-in when they're building now and they want to take advantages of economies of scale now. It's a conundrum, so I'd like Kendra to weigh in on that during your reports, Kendra, about how this could work, if you caught enough of the conversation to even understand it.
I didn't, sorry.
Okay.
I'm happy
or
to.
maybe weigh in later.
Yeah, I'm happy. Maybe I can talk to town
Yeah.
manager and then weigh in a little later.
Okay.
Sandy, before you move on, though, I agree that trying to have that discussion during a work session with limited time is challenging. It seems like we're at a point in this process of a rec space or indoor space or whatever we want to call it, that I think we all agree that we want to have this in town somewhere, sometime soon, that maybe it makes sense to have an off Monday night or an off day where we just dedicate a meeting just to this purpose, where we talk about the civic space that Trustee Hammerly wants to know more about, and potentially where we would put our rec center and all that stuff. So I would be all for taking an off Monday night or any other night and allocating, if we have to spend 3 or 4 hours just discussing this and seeing all the parameters. I think it would be time well spent.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay. I agree, and I'd like to have the same principles from Impact and Sports Stable. Plus, I'd like to have the Barker Rinker
CCAT
folks in the audience, and other people. Even I find Chris Drapinski quite helpful, so we have to have the right people in the room to ask all these questions. In terms of my report, West Connect this morning at 7:30 a.m. with Alex, and West Connect's getting to the very end of their planning and environmental linkage study, which includes 470, 93, that Highway 6 in Golden area, et cetera. So there will be a public meeting at first of the year to go over their plans, and we may actually be a host of that public meeting here, yet to be determined. But anyway, so this first charge of West Connect is nearing an end, a successful end. Had a CAPS meeting November 16th. They had it early because of Thanksgiving. They're now down to 3 finalists out of the 120 plus. They're going to use the next several weeks to ask those finalists to tweak those proposals. And then, Matt, in your report, if you could say when we're going to have that come before the board. I think it's the last meeting of January. Anyway, and then they also were asked to weigh in on the monument sign proposal that Ranch Capital has asked us to comment on, and they adopted a unanimous recommendation that they did not feel that monument sign was compatible with their version of what they want things to look like. Understand it's right across the street from the $200,000 roundabout art project. And it goes 48 feet high, and the tallest proposal we've gotten for roundabout art is 30 or 35 feet. And so anyway, you'll be getting that typed comment from that committee before the meeting in which we discuss the monument sign. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Just to tie into the discussion we had during the work session, I think the staff's emphasis should be on pursuing the negotiations right now and the concept plan with Impact and the sports stable. I don't want staff diverting their attention and focusing on what the Richmond 15, full $35 million rec center is going to look like. And just for clarification, my understanding is under Tabor, if we're going to raise taxes or we're going to borrow money, we need to go to the voters. If this thing can get financed in a way that doesn't require us to raise taxes or borrow any money, we don't have to go to the voters. And if that's the case, then there is the possibility that we can deliver this rec center amenity to the town in a easier, more efficient manner. And by no means am I saying that this is necessarily taking care of the civic space component. I think we still need to have these discussions. But right now we have this out of the box thinking, this idea of delivering an aquatic center, expanding Impact Sports and Sports Stable. And I think we should just focus our energy on seeing that through. And if it's a possibility, let's fully explore it. If it's not, then we can turn our attention to a rec center on the Richmond 15. But I don't want staff to really spend too much time thinking on something that we're actually not really considering, because I think what we're considering right now is this concept from Impact and the Sports Stable, and if we can actually get that done, then that's what we should be spending our time on. So other than that, no report here.
Okay. Thanks, Sandy.
I already gave my comment on the sports stable proposal, and I have nothing else to report tonight.
Okay, thanks. Kevin?
A few things. First on the agenda, well, I approved the agenda. We have a lot on the agenda, and so hopefully those that are in the audience will choose to stay with us. Currently, we're scheduled to adjourn at 11:05. I want to make a comment around that. 2 weeks ago, we adjourned at about 8 p.m., and so it feels like some better balancing on our agenda topics, and sometimes things could be helped and sometimes they can't be helped, but we're pretty stacked tonight. Having said that, we can't rush through some really important conversations we're going to have around that may impact the future of this town for many, many years to come. So if we don't get through the agenda by 10:30 or 11, I think anybody should feel free to raise their hand and say, I'm on fumes and may not be able to make the informed decision. And if anybody does that, you will absolutely have my support. And in fact, I may be one of those people that raised my hand to say, I'm on fumes, and towards 11 o'clock we need to think about adjourning. With regard to the civic space or rec center, yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely supportive. I agree more detail is required. I think trying to get to a point where we could have a draft term sheet between the businesses or stakeholders, I think it's a very creative solution. And getting to that draft term sheet, not a contract that we're going to approve or disapprove, but a term sheet that better stipulates exactly what we're agreeing to and some of the financials, would be a good next step. To reinforce what Mark says, I do not think the Richmond 15 is a viable opportunity, $35 million, and having staff spend more time or more cost trying to figure out what that looks like, to me, doesn't feel like it should be a priority at this point. I think the priority should be let's run the current opportunity down while there's still construction going on there, and see what we could do to get that term sheet. Well, no significant announcements. There's a very important meeting coming up next Wednesday at the Boulder County Courthouse. The Boulder Consortium of Cities is tackling the opioid crisis. This will be a very well-attended meeting. Please, if you are available, I believe the meeting starts at 6 p.m. Superior is a member of the Boulder Consortium of Cities. I believe a handful of us will be there. It impacts every community our community as much as everybody else, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the consortium can do to tackle this. So please join me next Wednesday, 6 p.m. at the Boulder County Courthouse.
Thank you. Rita?
I attended a historical commission meeting on November 17th, and the only thing I want to report is that the historical museum will be open on December 2nd from 3:30 to 5:30 prior to and during the time that the counting of the lights is happening. So they usually are open in the morning, starting at 10 or 10:30, but this, because of the counting the lights, is happening that evening or afternoon and evening. They'll be open, the museum. So stop by there when you're out there trying to count the lights and eating your or drinking your hot chocolate and other things that are going on there. And then my comment about the whole discussion about amenities for the town. I think that we're always really eager and good at talking about what the amenities should look like and how big they should be and all this kind of stuff. But we never really get down to the deep and nitty-gritty discussion about how it's going to get paid for. And I feel that we got cut off tonight and not had a discussion about how it would get paid for and how we would pay for all these 10 million chunks of amenities that we're looking at. Because the community center space would be probably $10 million, and this space would be $10 million associated with the building that's already in existence over at the town center. So I think we need to get back to having, maybe start with how would we pay for it and who would pay for it, and then talk about, okay, how much are we willing to pay for certain amenities, instead of getting excited about, yes, I want that, and let's figure out how to get it. And we need to really have the discussion about how we're going to pay for it, because $500,000 every year coming out of a budget for the town is a big deal. And if we're thinking about 1,000 people out of the town of 13 or 14,000 using it, that's a big deal too. So we have to think about the cost to all of our residents for an amenity that probably 1,000 or 1,500 of people would use it. So those are my comments. As we move forward, we need to very quickly move into the discussion about how it gets paid for and who pays for it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the recreation center ideas and discussions, I was very encouraged by what I heard and look forward to a much fuller discussion at a work session or special meeting that we might have coming up on that. So thanks to everyone for putting that together. A couple of announcements this Saturday, as a couple of people have mentioned. There's Skate with Santa at the Sports Stable, 2:30 to 4 p.m. And then and that's sponsored by the Superior Chamber and Dixon Orthodontics. And then that is followed up by Count the Lights at Asti Park, 3:30 to 5:30. So hope to see lots of people out for that. And thanks, Heather, for sending out the message today on that. And on Sunday, the day after, at the Sports Stable, they're having a Zamboni driving class. And I have registered for that. So that should be an entertaining event. Pardon?
Stay off the ice while you're
Well, they scheduled it after the Skate with Santa, and that was not by accident.
Good
so.
thing it wasn't during the Skate with Santa.
Yes, that's right. So I've always wanted to drive a Zamboni, so this is my opportunity. Monday, December 11th is our final meeting of the year, unless we decide to have another meeting, special meeting or something. And then Sunday, December 17th, 9 a.m. is the stocking run, 5K run, for those who like running in chilly weather. And that is it for my announcements. Matt?
Just one announcement. So we are working on an update to the IGA with Boulder County Sheriff's Office on law enforcement services for the town. Will be scheduled for the December 11th meeting for your review, and Sheriff Pelly will be in attendance at that meeting. So if you have any questions in advance that you'd like me to share with him that he can come prepared for, please send those to me, and we can get those to him in advance. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Kendra? Okay, Shannon? Thanks. All right, we are now on to public comment. If you'd like to make any public comment, just give a little wave. I'll signal you to come up and introduce yourself with your name and address, and we'll go from there. Any public comment? Going once, going twice. You know you're thinking about it. Okay. All right, no public comment. We're on to presentations. We have none. All right, we're on to number 12, consent agenda. See, Kevin, we're already way ahead of schedule. Way ahead of schedule here. So just,
I move to approve.
all right, motion by trustee Lasis.
Second.
Second by trustee Hanson. All those in favor?
But I recuse myself from the minutes. I wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay. All right, all those in favor of the consent agenda? Passes unanimous. Thank you. All right, number 13, adoption of an ordinance approving the purchase and sale agreement for Pond 11, Drake Real Estate. Matt?
Thank you, Mayor. For the board's consideration is the agreement to sell a piece of property owned by the town to Drake Superior Partners. The property referred to as Pond 11 is located at the southeast corner of Marshall and McCaslin Boulevard. The pond was originally constructed to collect stormwater from original town. Staff has determined through a third-party study that the detention pond is no longer required to detain and treat stormwater from original town and is available to be filled in and used as a commercial pad site at the location. The current stormwater that is detained by the pond will be treated through stormwater features planned as part of the Coal Creek improvements that are hopefully going to start next year. The property is within the downtown Superior development, planned development, and is a prime location for commercial use at the corner of McCaslin and Marshall. Drake Superior Partners has a tenant under contract for the property to develop for the sale and service of electric vehicles. The tenant's a national company that currently only has 2 other sales and service locations in Colorado and none in the US 36 corridor. The tenant will be a destination commercial use, and they're proposing to build a single building on the site up to 22,000 square feet. Additional details for the building and site development will be reviewed as part of the final development plan. This agreement will be contingent. It's the first step in the process and will be contingent on approval of the FDP. It's expected that the board would see an FDP sometime in late February, early March. And construction to start in early summer, late April, early May. The attached agreement would sell the property to Drake for $294,000. If the agreement is approved tonight, Drake would begin its due diligence process prior to closing and begin the planning process for consideration of the final development plan. Thing to note, because a portion of Park 1 would be needed for parking and would be needed to be sold to Drake, the town would also need to approve the deed from RC Superior for Park 1 at least. Conditions of the sale include the purchase price at $294,000, $10,000 in earnest money paid to the purchaser and held in escrow, 60-day evaluation period, 120-day entitlement period, closing to occur within 30 days after the entitlement period is finished. The town would relocate the stormwater pipes that serve the pond now, and Drake would fill in the pond to make it pad ready. Staff estimates that the current site generates no revenue as its current use. Once developed, it's estimated that the site would generate $75,000 to $80,000 in annual revenue. In addition to the land sale price and then one-time development fees of $100,000, which are the system development fees, water, sewer, and storm. Staff's included some comparables of other incentives from Louisville and Lafayette, and also a chart on comparable uses if other tenants, retailers, were to occupy the site and develop it, and what those revenues and costs would be to the town. Jonathan Power from Drake Real Estate is here tonight to answer any questions you may have. One last thing, I did receive a call from Bill Jinks with RC Superior on Friday, and he had a request to include the property into their District 3 30 mil district. This property is not currently included in that district, but he feels that it would help the whole downtown Superior development as far as paying off the bonds and helping to build public improvements. The only other property that's in the downtown Superior plan development that's not included in one of their special districts is the Center Point property, which currently has Starbucks and Firehouse Subs and T-Mobile located in it.
They're not included.
They are not.
So are you asking us to weigh in, or do you think we should?
Well, I think
include it?
it's not currently factored into the financial deal that's proposed between Drake and the tenant, and so we would need to ask their input on that as well. But
So Matt, I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions, but I
Yeah.
guess I didn't. So on page 3, bullet 4, in the second sequence of bullets,
yeah,
town receives no property tax for 21 years and a portion of the building use tax, permit, plan review. These go to the SURA TIF and STC master developer. So is it in or not?
it's part of the development agreement, but it's not in the they have 3 special taxing districts.
Right.
One is 30 mils, one is 40 mils, and I think one's 50 mils.
Right. So it's
So
not.
it is not in any one of those.
So how do I reconcile that comment with this bullet?
So we would, Urban Renewal Authority would collect the property tax that currently exists, which is 116 mils roughly. And that would flow to the development to pay out the bonds. But this additional 30, 40, or 50 would not be collected as it currently stands.
That doesn't sound right.
SORA is a separate district from the other 3 districts that are within.
I thought the sum of the 3 districts equal to SURA is, to my recollection, so I'm surprised by that.
There's 4 districts. There's SURA, and then there's 3 additional districts.
I thought,
SURA collects the town's mill levy, which is a little less than 8, the county's mill levy, the school district, all the taxing authorities' mill levies, and redistributes those to the metro district in the downtown Superior development to pay the bonds used to build the public improvements.
And that's the TIF.
I understand, but what
The mill levies are not TIF,
I
so that's the difference.
They're on top of TIF.
They're on top of TIF.
I understand.
Oh.
I understand the difference between that the mill levy is cumulative to the TIF. I'm not connecting the dots from the documents that I've read that the fact that the 3 districts are, that the revenue, that we would receive no property tax revenue given the fact that it's not in one of the 3 TIFing districts, the 30, 40, or 50. So,
They're not TIFing.
okay.
They're,
TIFing, we made a new word.
they're not tipping. The 30, 40, and 50 mils,
not tips.
that's tax from each one of the districts. If it's not included in any of those districts, none of that 30, 40, or 50 will ever be collected or put towards the TIF. Does that make sense? So
Okay.
it's separate.
And since it was town-owned, Pond 11 is town-owned at the time that the TIF was approved through SURA, then it was incremental taxes collected as of that time. So now if we change this over to, now for commercial use, basically rezone it, so to speak, is it really part of that, are those considered incremental taxes that go to, through SURA to the metro districts in the Superior Town Center? Because right
Yes.
now, there are no incremental taxes, and there were no taxes, so.
But this is the increment. We'll
Okay.
be creating the increment, yes.
Right.
But it is geographically SURA.
Yes.
Yes,
And
correct.
that's isn't that the operative
Yes.
element here?
Basically, if they're not included in the district, they're gonna be missing out on 30 mils.
At a minute.
And
Which district is that 30 mil? What do
That's
they do?
District 3.
I'm sorry?
District 3?
So it's the management district for the whole area, because District 1 is part of, if I remember right, and District 2 is the other part of the town center development, and 3 manages all of them. Okay.
Okay. Do we have any more presentation, or?
Jonathan, did you want to come up and make any statement, or?
You know, I was here for questions, but I'm happy to
think everyone knows that, well.
Yeah, come on up.
Why not?
You're gonna be up there, so.
I'm Jonathan Power, I'm from Drake Real Estate. I would love to tell you all about this project, although I think everyone on the board knows that just getting the language approved from our tenant was challenging enough, so I'm under a strict NDA in terms of what the plans are and what it'll look like and all those questions that you want to ask now and what I want to tell you, but I just can't at this time. So I'm happy to field any questions about the real estate transaction.
So one question, I guess, for you is, as I mentioned, the agreement's contingent on a final development plan being approved. If an unfortunate occasion would arise where you and your tenant, the deal didn't move forward for some reason, you wouldn't want to continue with the final development plan, is that correct?
That's correct. We don't have any interest in owning a piece of ground that's not zoned for a use, and so we would not proceed.
Could I follow up with Kendra on that, though?
Sure.
The contract, as now stated, does not have that caveat in it explicitly that I could find.
It does not. There's no
So
way to
why
do that
not?
without naming.
Why not?
Because there's no way to do that without naming
Okay, but
the thing that we can't name.
can we not arrive at some language that says this is specifically for this purpose, if that, and that document, couldn't it be signed privately, naming that?
No.
Because the bottom line is, while you're well-intentioned, if this falls through, I don't.
You would still have the opportunity at the time of approval of the final development plan to impose such a condition on approval of the final development
No,
plan.
but I don't want to go ahead with the sale.
Right, but the sale is contingent upon approval of the final development plan. So because the purchase and sale contract is
Okay,
contingent upon the
Tell
zoning.
me where in that language that is.
Let's see. It's in section 5. If purchaser is unable to obtain all necessary approval for entitlements the purchaser deems necessary, purchaser shall have the right to terminate this agreement.
Okay, so why is it not specifically stated, final development plan? Why is that language not in that entitlement section?
It's just not typical. Typically, you just put all entitlements in that section.
But to me, this feels one way, right? So it's if the purchaser is unable to obtain the necessary approvals, purchaser shall have the right to terminate. It doesn't say that this shall terminate and the escrow money, the earnest money is returned. It's you will have the right, which would presumably mean Drake would also have the right to seek another tenant or resell the property.
Right, but what I'm saying is if you have an application for an FDP, and that application comes forward and you want a specific use on that FDP, you would make that the condition of approval of the FDP, and then that would be the only use allowed. And so if Drake couldn't find a user that would follow along with that use, then they wouldn't proceed to purchase the property. Does that make sense?
But to Kevin's point, why is the language in here, purchaser shall have the right to terminate this agreement? Why would we not say this agreement will be terminated?
Well, it's usually up to the purchaser to determine what entitlements they need. We could certainly add some language. It's very difficult to do, is all I'm telling you, without naming what we can't name.
But the only entitlement that's going to allow them to do anything is the FDP.
Right.
And without that, no one is going to buy this property.
Right.
No one.
If we don't, I understand the concern, which is if we don't get the improvements, you think that we're going to buy the property anyway and somehow
Figure out
engineer a different use.
another tenant, et cetera.
But
et
here's where it
cetera.
gets sticky. If you have a termination right and it's gray, what you're asking us to do is invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in an entitlement process, and then at the end of the day, still not have control. So we need to know that we have control in order to spend that money to get to the FDP. I feel confident that you have enough control over the process that we won't get to the end if you don't want us to get there. And if we don't get the approval that we need, we certainly won't proceed.
Here's the worst nightmare for me, is this doesn't go through for some reason with this particular tenant. You have the land, and you hold on to it for 50 years and do nothing with it, and it's just a dead corner. What prohibits that? Because
Well,
frankly, it's pretty dang cheap.
we could have that, certainly that debate, although I would respectfully disagree, given what it would cost to fill in the pond, and given where the tenant is willing to, or that business can support. So for this particular use, we actually had the benefit of chasing a different site in Superior, and so we went through probably, I would guess, somewhere around 40 different budgets trying to get it to work. And through that process and a relationship that we've had with the tenant, we've done over, this will now be our 4th project. We have a pretty good idea where we need to be in numbers-wise, and so the
Well, what
land
I'd
cost
like-
is where it needs to be to get this project
What I'd
done.
like to do, I don't want to encumber this right now with this, but I've got a feeling there are a lot of other questions here. Kendrick, could you possibly get your mind around how we might tweak this language?
I'm just
by
not
the end
sure
of
they're
the
going to agree. I
conversation?
could, but I don't think they're going to agree to it.
Yeah.
I mean,
because-
it's very unusual. So this is the typical language, and this is, again, why they spend $100,000 on planning, and I don't, we could go talk offline, and we could see, but I imagine it's not going to be accepted.
I don't think it's necessary, though, Sandy.
I-
I mean, entitlements are what they need to get it done. And we grant the entitlements.
Right. But what makes them, let's say the tenant pulls out, right? Okay? After we sell this land to them. What prohibits them from hanging on to that piece of land forever and ever, amen, with nothing happening on it? I mean,
I think
this
whoever's
gives all
putting-
the power to the purchaser.
Yeah, but people that put up that kind of money don't typically like to just buy land and let it sit there. I mean,
But what would save them from reselling it and making a whole lot of money off of it?
because anybody else that's going to buy it wants entitlements or wants to know that they can get entitlements. And without that, you don't have a sale.
So
And it's not like we've had, you know, a number of people lining up at our door trying to buy this lot for the past, 15, 20 years.
It's also a
that the
lot that's
town's-
not listed, though, so it's.
But we haven't
right.
But I mean,
offered this lot.
the town didn't pay for it. Currently we're receiving absolutely no taxes related to this lot. The value that we've internally valued at is $49,000. So we're selling it at $300,000 approximately. It's going to generate $70,000 to $80,000 a year in taxes to the town.
Yeah, Mark, I don't think well, hold on, I don't think anybody's debating we're very appreciative of Drake and the tenant and finding a way to make this work, and understand you looked at a number of different scenarios, so that this is gonna be a discussion, right? And we're gonna have a lot of questions, and so I wanna be able to answer those questions, and that doesn't mean that we're not supportive of the broader initiative, because I'm generally very supportive of the broader initiative, although we raise a really good point. And the what-if game is challenging because your tenant's extremely confident they're going forward, you're extremely confident that you're gonna go forward. If some reason this doesn't happen, you're extremely confident that you wouldn't resell because we hold the entitlements, but this what-if game is something that you get hung up with, and that's something that you try to address in a contract. And so, let me just take the what-if game one step further. Let's assume that your tenant falls through, but it is now a desirable space because you've filled the pond. The pond's been
But
filled.
it's not zoned for anything.
No.
But let's assume,
mean-
but I understand, but we decide that things are booming across the street, and now we want to bring in a different type of tenant, and again, offer a discounted, our perception, a discounted value to the next purchaser. But if you hold the land, we're not able to recruit that next purchaser without bringing in you to say, hey, we want you to, we sold this land for $294,000, but we want to sell it to the next guy for $200,000. And so help us broker, but we don't necessarily want to write it, we don't want to be write you a check for $94,000 in addition, and you're not going to sell it at a discount. So I do like the idea of spending a few minutes trying to figure out that if these entitlements don't come through, is there a way, and maybe we could time box it with the condition of the property, which there's some language around there that things get extended, that close dates get extended. Instead of, can we have the ability to not extend a close date, and so the contract ends, the earnest money is returned, and that's it, right? So we have a year to close or some reasonable amount of time. I don't know. I want to spend a few minutes
Sure.
trying to figure out if there's a way to do this.
I think one of the issues, again, as I just said, this is right now zoned as a PD as pond. So nobody can make any use of this until it comes back to you, and you would have to approve that use.
Mhm.
So in that sense, I think that's what you were saying. The board holds all the cards there, because there has to be an application before anyone could do anything. Even if they turn around and sold it, it's who is going to buy. I don't know how many buyers you're going to have for properties owned as a pond. So I don't think the risk on that is very great at all. And the problem with, I think what you're suggesting is then the town holds all of the cards. In other words, if you can get out of the contract by simply not approving the FDP, so if you suddenly decide, I just don't know that they're going to invest in this if that's if that's a possibility. But
We wouldn't, because if something comes up and says, I don't like the color, the FDP is not going to, we're not going to approve it. Just something, because they just decided they changed their mind ultimately. Now we've got, 6 months worth, and well, in this case, quite a bit longer. We've been working on it, and the entitlement process is more expensive than you think. It will be material, and so we would not move forward if there was a chance we got to the end of the road and didn't control the land essentially. I understand the concern. I don't have a magic solution. I'm racking my brain here, and I'm reluctant to come up with ideas without speaking to my counsel. But
the only other thing I could think of, and that's what the town manager has suggested, is some sort of an option to repurchase.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
But then you're going to get into costs. How do we get our costs back? How do we determine what our costs are? Do we place a value on our time? Hard costs, maybe. Trying to think what we've done in the past.
Well, can we ask a couple of questions before we go further down? I have a couple of questions, not so much of you, but of staff. And so, in our last discussion about this, we talked about the market value for this lot, that we were going to fill it in as a town and present it for purchase, or for sale, present it for sale, which we've not done. But now we have Drake, who's come forward and said the other option that they were looking at didn't materialize and didn't work out. So now maybe let's look at your lot, which is just directly in front of where they were looking at. So I go back to our discussion, I believe, was that the lot that we were going, the pond that we were going to fill in would be a market value of at least what we got for the lot directly across Marshall, where Starbucks is, Center Point purchase, and that was some $600 and some $1,000. So that was the minimum that we were talking about potentially that the market value would be. And we even talked about numbers up to $800,000, I think, that is also in this document as well. So now we're having a discussion about actually moving a storm sewer that will cost the town $300,000, and then selling this now new lot for a commercial enterprise for $294,000, which wouldn't even recover our costs to move the sewer, and end up being half of the purchase price would be half of what we said the minimum market value would be for that lot. So I'm kind of lost in the weeds here that $294,000 isn't enough for that piece of ground, and
But you're not including the $300,000 that it's going to cost to fill that site in.
but we were going to do that, and then we
Right,
would
but
have
that costs money. So whether we do it or somebody else does it, it costs a certain
but
amount of
Mark,
money.
So if we can fill it in for $300,000 and sell it for $900,000 or $800,000, and then public improvements are the responsibility of the developer. And if that sewer actually needs to be moved, maybe not, because we've built a parking structure on top of a storm sewer over by the medical office building. So I'm not convinced at this point in time that the town needs to spend $300,000 to move a storm sewer from, I don't even know where it is on that property. And maybe our money would be better spent to use, and I'm not sure it would cost $300,000. I haven't gotten that estimate from our engineers to fill it in. So I'm sitting here, the numbers don't work for me. We're basically saying that we're going to spend $300,000 to offer up for sale a piece of ground that we're going to get $294,000 back for. And that isn't a good deal from my perspective.
But you're not looking at the actual investment in what would actually be made as a use on that site, who would occupy that site, and what the effect of that sort of thinking would have going forward for our town, right? I mean, you look at
But
the
we
cover.
can't have that
Hold on a
discussion
second.
because we can't
But
even
no,
have
you
a
look at
conversation
the
about
cover
it.
memo here. That this is public record. What what was prepared here with Louisville, what they did with Alfalfa's, what Lafayette did with Jack's. All of these were not just pure market transactions. They were all investments that the communities made in order to attract a tenant, because those communities were forward thinking and thinking about, what benefit will this tenant bring to our community. And it's a gamble, but these are the types of gambles that communities make when they want to attract a tenant.
But Mark, the difference here is that the Drake was negotiating this with this same tenant, not on our land, but in the town center town, and we were all for it. I mean, absolutely, I think it'd be wonderful. Absolutely was all for that. But you all dropped out then. And now all of a sudden it's come forward and said, we can't make it work financially with the Superior Town Center, so therefore, let's get it for nothing from the town. And that's what I'm saying, is that I don't know that we need to now give up that land for nothing, which is basically what we'd be doing. We'd be giving that land for nothing to, we get nothing from it because we have to spend as much as we have to spend more than what we're going to get paid. So my question is, why can't we market that to Drake or to whoever wants to come and buy it at a market price, not at a below market price? Yep. Because we can't have this discussion yet about what we're going to get out of it, because we can't even talk about who's going to build there and what is going to be built.
Because you're going to miss an opportunity of a lifetime. Okay. And that's the short-sightedness that
I agree with that.
This would
you're
not,
doing right now.
It was a matter of it not fitting in town center. I mean, in the town center.
The space.
And why does it fit here
space
in
they were
this
looking
space
at.
that's even smaller?
Well,
It doesn't fit
maybe
here
you could
either.
there are a number of reasons why it didn't work in the town center. Number one, it was cost, and the cost was more than the tenant was willing to pay, and that was for a variety of reasons. The second one is the access was not good enough for this tenant. They are going to do one location in this trade area, and they want it to be a landmark building and location. And behind a hotel always gave them heartburn. And then, we didn't just say, hey, we're dropping out of this because it's cost. We actually started looking around in the market, and they will find another site. They absolutely will. They have a circle drawn around this area, and they will find a site. Whether you want it to be in Superior, I think it would be a great fit. If you don't, I don't know what can go there. I can tell you from retail's perspective, they're very, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, the list of retail tenants expanding right now is very small. So you can test the market. You might get something you like. You might own it for the next 15 years. I can't answer who would be there. I can say that Drake thought about who else we could put there, and we came up with a very short list. We've called 2 tenants. I think this would be a great opportunity. That's what I think.
I agree, it's a great opportunity. At what cost, so, is my concern. And the fact that we're giving up part of our Park One, and we're going to have a whole bunch of parking spaces there that we never intended for that spot. So there's a lot of other unexpected and unintended consequences that are coming out of this that were not what we were originally told about when this tenant was working with you to possibly go on the other side. So we've been miscommunicated I feel very, not from you, but, we've gotten various different pieces of information. And so now here we are to create, to enter into a contract with you when we don't understand all the details of what's going to go there, how it's going to go there, how it's going to fit there, but yet we're really basically giving you, Drake, that piece of land. We're giving it to you.
You're certainly going to have the opportunity to understand every detail. The site plan, the process is going to be, well, I look forward to it because it's truly that's what we do. And so you're going to have an opportunity to weigh in on the site plan. We've actually already had a pre-application meeting, and we've already addressed concerns from Parks and Rec and traffic. And so we will incorporate every single comment we get from the town, and we'll make the project fantastic. That's what I can promise you. And you will have input all the way along. So you will have every detail. But without having control of land, I don't think you'll find any developer willing to go through the entitlement process because of the expense.
So I think
So the only way to get the detail is to go through the design process.
So far, I think we've heard, and I know there's going to be a lot of other questions, but so far I think there's two different issues. And the issue that I have, or that we've first talked about, is if we stay in this lane and there's no surprises, right? If the tenant materializes, if building goes on, then things look good. But it's once you start swerving out of that lane, then the contract, it seems to, I don't think it favors us. I don't think it's neutral. I think it very much favors you. If things go south, Drake is favored in this contract, and that makes me uncomfortable because I like contracts to sort of cover those contingencies for a what if. And there's some fuzzy language around, the parties will behave reasonably, and I just don't like that fuzzy language. So I'm not giving up on this first topic. The second topic, with regard to the financials, so I'm personally comfortable with the financials as they're currently structured.
Great. I understand the concern about what happened, all the what ifs. I mean, I'm in the business. Of all the calls I've gotten from tenants, hey, this happened, I mean, you're absolutely right to be thinking about that. I think that you have enough control during the, through the FDP and the final approvals.
It's right. To me, it's.
But I understand.
You've shown us now that I've driven by that property thousands of times. I've never thought about the value of that property. Within the last few months, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the value of that property. So, you've shown us how valuable it is and how great your tenant would be there. And I have confidence that your tenant will be great there. It's just, if your tenant does not materialize through things beyond your control, things beyond our control, things beyond all of our control, and that property that I now look at with envy to say, wouldn't it be a great brewery or school or rec center, who knows? Those things are no longer within our control. Those things become within your control. I don't like that.
On those two topics, I'm also with you on the financials. I think the bigger picture value that this adds is an opportunity of a lifetime for a town like ours. So I'm all behind that. And as far as the risk to the town, I'm also not concerned about that. I mean, being in the real estate business and just kind of knowing how these contracts are written and how these kind of things function, I think we're adequately protected here. I mean, anyone wanting to do anything on that land is going to need our support. And that's what the word entitlement means. And so I'm comfortable with that as written. Others? Sandy?
I'm not comfortable with the financials, and I'm not so much uncomfortable with anything you've said to us. I am extremely uncomfortable with the fact that when we talked about this before, no, I don't remember any conversation about $300,000 to move a sewer pipe. And so for now, I know we did say, we think the market value of this property is higher. And so to basically be taking a loss because it's going to cost us $300,000 to move a sewer pipe, and we're going to get $294,000 just from a fiscal responsibility. And I know a lot of folks here have a vision that this is going to, this tenant being here is going to make us the most, the richest county in America or something. I think most folks know I'm not on that same page based on the value, the perceived value of where that piece of property sits. But I think the bigger issue for me is reading this packet information that was presented to us and some of the assumptions that have been put forth in the grid about the value of this sale. The fact that we've never even looked at this as whether some other tenant might be interested in it is, to me, I don't just go out and buy the first car I see. I go out and look at various cars and see what the offers are. So to just fall on this because we think this is the greatest tenant ever. But what really bothered me is some of the assumptions. The first one being that we think this tenant will generate $75,000 to $80,000 a year in revenue. We have nothing to base that on, and I specifically asked our town finance director today, what did you get that? How did you make that assumption? And he wrote me back and he said, because we have another automobile dealership and service center, and that's about what we get from them. Very different market. We saw an article today from Trustee Dozell that something like half the people in America buy SUVs and in the month of October, but only 213 or 1,000 electric cars. I think it was a total of about 2,000 electric cars were sold. So, for me, I just say I'm just not. The money doesn't compute that we can realistically expect $75,000 to $80,000 in revenue from this entity, because another entity in town that sells SUVs, which are very highly in huge demand in Colorado. So that was the first assumption that I thought was unfair. But more importantly, I was basically offended by the statement that said if we were to put a multi-tenant development or a unique sit-down restaurant or a brew pub in there, it would cannibalize sales from existing businesses. We are building the Superior Town Center with the plan that 4 to 5 restaurants will go over there. We worried when we wanted to build Superior Town Center that we might cannibalize old Chicago or anything like that. So for me, this seemed desperate, that the only way that we could sell this is that this was something we didn't already have in town. So there are other models that could generate just as much revenue for us. I understand how everybody is excited about this possible tenant, but for me right now, that I'm not sold other than there's a name here. This is Tiffany's, and I'm just not sure that the name for me is what I want to give away. I don't want to give away the piece of land for a name.
Okay, Mark.
So this to me is an investment in our future, and it's the opportunity of a lifetime. The town didn't pay for this property. We're not going to be paying to fill the pond. Drake will be. If we wanted to develop this site, we'd have to pay for the site improvements. And there's always going to be the what ifs and the what could have beens. But we're not presented with any of those what ifs or what could have beens. We've got somebody who wants to use the site now, right? There's always going to be speculation as to, oh, well, wouldn't it be great if we had Tiffany's? Wouldn't it be great if we had whoever? But we don't. Right now, we have an opportunity knocking on our door, wanting to locate in Superior, and it is exactly the type of tenant that we should be doing everything we can to invite and entice to locate in Superior. You know, we've got a Costco, we've got a Whole Foods, we just approved an Ethan Allen. You know, these are the types of tenants that, you know, we want to attract here in Superior because, you know, it's an upscale community, and we want upscale tenants, and we want to have an image, and this is exactly the type of tenant that is in line with, you know, what Boulder's all about, what Superior is all about, what Boulder County is all about. You know, we should be doing everything that we can do to attract this type of tenant. You know, I believe that we're going to generate the $70,000 to $80,000 in taxes, and you know, we're going to be also the beneficiaries of a lot of high-paying jobs, or people who are going to be working at this tenant's facility. So, you know, I am 110% in favor of moving forward. I am comfortable that we have the adequate protections with the entitlement process going forward. So step one is let's approve this contract right now, authorize the sale, then we can move forward to the FDP and see this thing through.
Thank you. Sandy?
Been at this a long time. Some of you don't know that Taco Bell wanted to be right there. Mull that one over. And we said no. No to Taco Bell. We want something bigger and more important and more prestigious and more in keeping with a vision. So we currently have that player in front of us. Two things trouble me about this. And I want our legal counsel to address them as best she can. But the rest of the financials don't bother me on this particular math problem here. I appreciate that there is a math problem, so I'm listening to both Rita and Sandy, but on this particular opportunity, I'm not bogged down on that. The first problem is one already addressed, and the second problem, because you can't ignore the email Rita sent out, is if this tenant ceases to exist, the business, the tenant materializes, everything's good, and then the tenant goes out of business. Drake is left holding a steal, in my opinion, for a piece of land that they then own and they can do anything with. And of course, how does that work?
Well, I think that's where
Okay.
they can do anything with. In other words, if the FDP is quite specific, even so much as specific to the tenant, then once that ends, then they have to come back.
They have to come back.
They have to come back. So you would then have whoever the board is at the time would then have another opportunity to say, okay, this is what we want on this parcel. We realize we don't own it anymore, but we have the ability to control what happens on the parcel.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only thing that could happen is exactly the same thing that you've already approved. So
But we only get one shot at, I'm going to put this in quotes, discounting the parcel.
Sure,
So,
I
we're
agree.
right.
I agree.
You get one chance at discounting the parcel. It's just so, I mean, I like Clint's process around, sort of, it feels like you're taking a pulse, right? But I do have some other, I've got a shopping list of questions, and I put the questions in the, administrivia noise, I think my major things are around the financials and the control of the property, but I do have some other questions. Let me just, if I could.
Kevin, can I just finish the end of my statement? I want staff to be clear, so Matt and Kendra to be clear. I'm holding you responsible. For that that we will not be surprised by ineffectual contract language that gets us into a battle later on. You know, I am still reeling from cost-sharing agreements and the like, where the language wasn't as precise as it needed to be. So I just want you to know, I've got to rely on somebody here. I think this is a great opportunity. I need you to speak into the camera and tell us we're protected, and then I'm going to hold you responsible for it.
Well, and I can tell you, you're
That's where we
protected,
are.
but it's up to the board to deal with the FDP. So I
Right.
can't tell you.
I'm
you have a
talking
whole board to
contract
deal with.
language.
So
Right.
if the board follows the process and approves an FDP, yes, you're protected. That's the area of control that the board has, is the FDP. So this is a standard real estate contract. It's the same contract we use for CenterPoint. It's the same contract we've used multiple times. And I'm just telling you, the contract is fine as your element of control over the use of the property is in the zoning.
Well, and
So
as
Kendra, I
this-
did find a couple exceptions there.
Okay.
So, for example, in the purchaser's remedies,
Mhm.
there's two additional sentences, or at least one additional sentence, at the end of page 4. So usually in our standard contracts that I've read, and I haven't done a lot of these, but the return of the earnest money is the exclusive remedy. It is not the exclusive remedy here. Purchasers shall have all remedies available at law or equity for such breach, excluding, unless specifically provided by applicable law, the remedy of specific performance.
Yes.
So that is not standard.
That is a negotiated, that was language that was added by Drake.
So I gotta just say right now, if
Mhm.
I hadn't just said that, we would have been left with the impression that we have a standard real estate contract.
That is standard language in a real estate contract.
But it's not the, so I'm gonna, this does sort of tweak me a little, right? So,
Okay. Okay, I can go through and tell you every single difference. I can run a compare document right now between this and if you want, between CenterPoint. These are negotiated documents. We go back and forth with.
so I have two, I'll call them not deal breakers, but things that I don't understand why return of earnest money is not my exclusive remedy, your exclusive remedy. Number one, right? And so that's a negotiated deal point.
Sure.
I'd like Drake to respond to that. And number two, what I've looked at, so I really do appreciate, Matt, I specifically asked the question of the town, show me some other deals that have been done and some incentives. So I spent my Sunday afternoon trying to look through some of those deals, and this is unique because we're fronting money. And so did we pursue something that, so I think it's going to get a little confusing when we are filling a pond and relocating a storm drain at the same time. You could see we're probably going to hire the same contractors. It's probably going to be some pretty similar work. Did we investigate whether or not we could just take a not to exceed $300,000, have you do all the work, and then submit the invoices to our town staff? We reimburse those invoices, because if the relocation of the storm drain is $382,000, that's going to be frustrating. Likewise, if it's, $282,000, why isn't Drake taking the responsibility of readying the site? Since you're already going to fill the pond, and I think that's not easy work. I asked somebody in construction, and it depends on what you're going to put on there, and so I understand there's some risk and complexity there. But why not just also relocate the storm drain? We'll pay for it. But why are we doing the drain and paying for it?
Well,
Because
who's
I think
going to
it's going to
warranty
get
the work? I
co-mingled.
mean, we probably won't hire the same contractor. We may hire a portion of the same design team because it makes sense. But we would not, it will go to competitive bid. And if we're doing work on behalf of the town, then we get into all kinds of issues about who's responsible for a defect, for example, and who did it, and who's going to insure over it, and then there's going to be bonding requirements, I'm sure. I mean, I'm just coming up with things off the top of my head. Typically, as a developer, if you're going to be a land developer, you do all the horizontal infrastructure and deliver it, with utilities 5 feet of the site, and then we take it from there. And that is kind of a clean delineation of responsibility and, you know, liability for the work that was done. In this case, I can't remember exactly how these numbers came up, but we were trying to figure out when we were doing our budgets for a tenant, which we did get approval for, you know, we were doing some cost estimating based on the best information we had. Trust me, I would love to share some of that risk with the town, because I think that with the way construction costs are going, it's going to be quite a bit more than the original estimates, which we did back in August to fill in that site. So I think I heard that you wanted us to relocate the pipes. I would have to talk to our attorney about that, number one. Number two, I have had no contact with anyone about the cost, so I don't know the reliability of those numbers.
So we didn't,
or
so
who
the
did
town
it.
did never ask, we never suggested, this is new, that, okay.
Well, and one of the factors for us is we're able to take advantage of the contractor that's going to be doing the Coal Creek improvements for urban drainage and their pricing. So that's an advantage to the town, to be able to use their contractor to relocate these.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Sandy where I didn't fully appreciate, maybe it was said and I missed it, about I definitely recall filling of the site, the relocation of the pipe was either escaped me or I don't remember it.
I don't remember it.
So that's
I do know that it's been a fluid project.
Right.
Pun intended. I mean,
Right, no
it's,
doubt.
so we've had a number of designs, including trying to maximize parking for the park, and you know we're trying to do everything we can, and so it doesn't surprise me.
So I am with
something
Trustee
will
Lasis that, you know, I'd love to get something tonight. I think you hear from us enthusiasm and appreciation of your tenaciousness through this fluid process, right? So thanks for that. And so I hate the idea of you going back, checking with council, getting estimates on relocation of the pipe, but I guess it's an interesting, I mean, I get what you're saying, Matt, that we want to take advantage of the existing contractors for urban drainage and that project. Can you talk for a minute about the exclusive remedy and why return of the earnest money is not the exclusive remedy, which would be?
Just to clarify, this is exactly the same language that was in Centerpoint, with the exception of the additional language that says, unless specifically provided by applicable laws. It's exactly the same. This is standard language. It's not usually just return of the earnest money. If they invest several $100,000s in planning, they're not going to just want their earnest money back.
Well, I'm not an attorney, so I don't remember exactly how this, but I thought there was some sort of state statute or
There is.
There had to be some specific performance.
The state statutes prohibit specific performance against municipalities. So originally the language said excluding specific performance. Your attorney came back and said, can we add language that says unless specifically provided by applicable laws? So,
Okay, so
I guess what your attorney was, this is getting really technical and I apologize, but
No,
what
no,
your attorney was
go.
trying to guard against is if the law changes in the next however many months,
Right.
allowing for specific performance, then we're stuck with specific performance. It's not going to change, but I understand where your attorney was coming from.
This is exactly why I'm not an attorney. So,
So anyway, the language is basically the same as Centerpoint, and it's pretty common. So I'm just
Right, I'm
throwing it.
just, to me, I'm playing out those what ifs, you know, not only, you know, what if, this is not just, you know, the first what if was, what if we close, but your tenant doesn't materialize or something changes. This other what if is just, what if, you know, we can't close this contract? Are we liable for, and it's in theory our breach, beyond returning the earnest money. I'm
Right.
trying to figure out what our liability is here.
It will be their costs. If we breach for no reason, it will be their costs.
What is no reason?
Well, if they don't pay us, we can breach. I mean, we don't have to consummate the contract. But if we just walk away, in other words, if we get to closing and we walk away, we have to pay them.
So what if we are, let's just play that one out one more time. So what if we are unable to, quote, reasonably agree on the plans and specifications in connection with the relocation of the stormwater system, which is required. We must reasonably agree upon the relocation of the stormwater. We say it should go here.
My
They say,
favorite.
nope, we want it to go there. The parties do not reasonably agree.
Right, what about it?
So.
We do not pay them their costs.
So
Correct.
we return the earnest money,
Yep,
and so this other mumbo jumbo would not apply.
correct.
They would, in that event, in that what if, the exclusive remedy is return of the 10,000 or whatever it is.
Yes.
Okay. Other questions?
Sequence of events. Will, and Matt, as well as Jonathan, will an FDP come forth before any other expense is incurred, either the drainage line or you're filling
Just
infill?
expense to me or expense to the town?
Both.
Both.
Because if in fact you bring us the FDP, then, and this thing goes south, because we can't agree on an FDP, then you have no additional costs beyond the cost of the property, nor does the town have additional cost. That seems the safest, frankly, to me, but was that the intent?
So timing, just to back up, let me give you some idea of what we expect, and maybe that'll answer the question. I mean, quite honestly, we're already spending money, and it's ongoing. So we went through a formal, there are many layers of approval in a company this size, and so we're down to, out of, I'll say it, 4 kind of preliminary. You have an operations guy that approves it, and you have a real estate department that approves it, and then you have kind of a lower level executive that approves it, and then the final approval is called executive approval, and that's actually supposed to happen tomorrow. And in order to get executive approval, there's already been site plans and just general things that get them an executive team comfortable with what we are going to propose in the FDP. We actually have to send them everything for their approval to share with you prior to. And so, assuming that we get an approval, and I was just trying to move as fast as I can. So, if we got an executive approval tomorrow, we would produce an FDP, as quickly as possible, and I think we're obligated to do so with our tenant within 30 days after approval of the sale. So, we will spend an enormous amount of money in the next 30 to 45 days.
So when would you infill? Only after approval of the FDP?
That would be, we would have to get approval of the FDP, and then we'd have to get a building permit. So you're talking about spending money probably in June-ish for that type of.
So do you guys
I
agree
expect
that the FDP
process
would have been approved
Yes.
before they
Yes.
have? And when do you intend to move the sewer line?
The timing will be the same for the town.
Okay. Because that seems wise. This timing seems wise. Get the FDP
So
approved.
nothing,
Yeah.
yeah,
No
FDP
hard
happens,
costs.
no hard cost.
Yeah.
Now that I'm on my 4th project, I'll say one of the great things about this potential tenant is they move quicker than any other tenant in 20 years of doing this. So once they decide, it's going to be they're going to move and we're going to do it, and it's going to be a great project. So it's not going to be, there aren't, in my experience, there aren't many layers of approval where we could get tripped up on, some executive vice president from a different area doesn't like the site. This is a real deal that is ready to go. So I would encourage you to, obviously it's in my best interest. I understand, and believe me, I appreciate everything that you've said about economics and protecting the town, but I do think as a developer, we take the risk. That's part of our job, is we take the risk to front the money to get the entitlements, and deals unfortunately die all the time. So to your concern about specific performance and the fact that we're going to come back after, I suppose it's possible that I could make some argument about reasonableness, but in 20 years I haven't, and I don't intend to start now. This is what we do. We take the risk, we bring a tenant to the town, we're going to build a fantastic building because, like you, if the tenant is around in 15 years, I have a lot more invested than the town does, and it's a huge number. So I want to make sure that that building is attractive, as reusable, and a landmark building that it can be. And I promise you that you will see that come out in our submittals. This is a design-driven tenant, and it's going to be awesome. It really will be.
Okay. Anything else, Mark?
I was going to make a motion.
I'm going to like to give some comments. I haven't
Okay.
given my comments yet.
Okay, Chris.
No matter what we do, what projects we've done in town, there's always risk. There's risk in everything that we've done. We had some very similar conversations about Boulder Valley Ice when that would before that ever broke ground. And if my memory serves me correctly, we give them a substantial value of property for that to go in Boulder Valley Ice. So this isn't the first time that we've done some kind of incentive like this. So to me, this incentive is minimal. It's non-material to me. I agree with the comments in the memo that we would be cannibalizing business if we didn't have this type of a tenant there. The benefit of having this type of tenant, and this is unfortunate that we can't disclose or understand who the tenant is because it makes the conversation so much more difficult. But from my perspective, having this type of tenant has value for a few different reasons. One, it's a high-end user, and we bring those types of people to our town is what we want. Two, this type of user, this space over here, these would be coming in for service. The consumer would be coming in for service. Then they would go and hopefully spend their time while their cars are being serviced in the restaurants and other parts of the town center. So that's why I say this is a big benefit to the town, that if it was a restaurant that went in, we would be cannibalizing business. They'd be going just to the restaurant, and that's about it. But this user, they're going to this location and then spending more time and more money in the town center. And then the third thing is that I honestly believe that we will be the envy of this country by having this tenant here. I mean, this is huge for us. It fits, I think, Boulder County very well, like Trustee Lasis has said. So I see nothing but upside potential here. I mean, this is a really good opportunity, and for us to even be second guessing this, I think is we'd be very wrong to do that. So this makes so much sense to me. So I definitely think this is something that we should be approving tonight.
Okay, thanks. Any further comments? Okay, Mark?
I'd like to make a motion, Town of Superior Ordinance number O-7, Series 2017. An ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a purchase and sale agreement with Drake Superior Partners, LLC, for the sale of real property owned by the town.
Second.
Okay, motion by Trustee Lasis, second by Trustee Hansen. Do we need a roll call vote?
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote.
Trustee Dozal?
No.
Mayor Folsom?
Yes.
Trustee Hammerly?
No.
Trustee Hansen?
Yes.
Trustee Lasis?
Yes.
Trustee Pennington?
Yes.
And Trustee Ryan?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes. All right. Congratulations, and
Thanks, you all.
look forward to working with you. Thank you.
I look forward to my submittal.
Yes. All right, we are on to item number 14, public hearing and adoption of an ordinance approving the National Electric Code. Gavel to open the public hearing. We have proof of publication. It's confirmed. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Mayor. The National Electric Code has been adopted and applied as part of the town's overall building regulations. The NEC is the national standard for electrical safety in the residential and commercial structures. The 2017 edition incorporates comprehensive updates to regulations for electrical wiring, overcurrent protection, grounding, and installation of equipment. The updated NEC was adopted earlier this year by the state, and local governments are required by the state to adopt the standard as well. If a municipality fails to comply, then the state has the authority to take over the municipality's electrical permitting and inspection process. Adoption of this edition of the NEC would not require a retrofit of a home or business in order to receive a building permit for typical repairs and maintenance. I think that's a key distinction. The new standard would be applied only when a resident or business applies for a building permit for new construction or remodels that include electrical work. For a remodel permit inspection process, only the area of the structure that is constructed would be required to meet this updated electrical standard. For example, a bathroom or kitchen renovation would be required to meet the new standard, specifically in the area being renovated, and the same would apply to a new basement finished project in an existing home. No additional requirements for compliance or changes to the current penalty provision would result from adopting the updated NEC. Staff is recommending adoption of this updated version without any technical edits. The attachments include the ordinance, a memo from the town attorney, National Electric Code, the updated edition, and analysis of changes of the NEC. Ernie Kern, our chief building official, is here tonight as well to answer any questions you may have, as well as Martin, who oversees the building department.
Okay. Questions from the board?
Why wouldn't we approve this? I mean, why?
I mean, staff.
It says we're required to do this.
Correct.
What's that?
I'm just laughing. You're correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So. Okay.
Yeah, we're recommending
You're required to do it.
It'd be adopted.
But it has to be done following this process. There has to be a public hearing.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any questions? Okay. Any public comment? Okay, seeing none. Anything further before I close the public hearing? Okay, public hearing's closed. Discussion? Motion.
I'll make a motion.
Chris.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'd like to make a motion that Town of Superior Ordinance Number O-8, Series 2017, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior adopting the 2017 edition of the National Electrical Code by reference.
Motion by trustee Hansen. Second by trustee Lasis. All those in favor? It passes unanimous. All right. All right, now we're on to budget. And we're well ahead of schedule.
Why did you just say that?
Tonight we have proposed adoption of the 2018 budget. Staff has a brief presentation covering major components of the 2018 budget. Then we'll open it up for board comments and discussion. And with that, I'll ask Paul to come up. And I just want to thank my staff for all of the hard work that they put into preparing these budgets, which is a time-intensive project.
Thank you, Mr. Magley, Paul Nellis, town staff. And in addition to staff efforts, want to recognize obviously the board's efforts. We've spent a couple of meetings, a number of hours reviewing in detail the budget, all our committee and commissions and their input to staff and to the board about this budget. So it truly is a collaborative process. The potential items for your consideration this evening include 9 actual action items, 1 ordinance and 8 resolution. You are going to be wearing essentially 6 different hats as board of directors of metropolitan or special districts, town trustee board of directors, commissioners for the Urban Renewal Authority. In a matter of simplicity, though, instead of going through each one of those board responsibilities, the presentation, and again, we will keep it brief, is intended to provide a synopsis of generally, what we're doing here, because essentially all those 6 entities are performing a similar goal. Yes, Mayor.
Sorry to interrupt, Paul. Should I open a public hearing at
That's fine.
this point?
Go ahead.
Okay, public hearing's open.
I have proof of
Proof of
publication
publication.
for 5.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So, so if it pleases the board, we'll just present a brief summary. The board has seen all of this information. This is hopefully more for public consumption of the 2018 budget. So the budget document obviously is an essential communication tool. It reflects board's policy decisions, and it implements. Essentially, it's a tool to implement our goals and priorities of the town board. So what we've done here is, with the board's 6 goals, we've incorporated essentially the budget elements and how they address each one of the board's goals. So the first budget goal, before we actually get to that, generally with these 6 entities, we're looking at roughly a $40 million budget, which is somewhat consistent with what we've approved in past years. It ebbs and flows a little bit based on capital project, but the scope of the project is consistent with what the board has seen in prior years. Now, specific to tying the budget to individual board goals, the first board goal is that of financial sustainability and business retention, or stability, excuse me, and business retention. From the financial stability standpoint, what this budget does and what it assumes is, with targeted growth within the community, predominantly downtown Superior, but also a couple of other select developments, this budget is planning to generate one-time revenues of $14 million, primarily associated with building construction activities, and as well as connection to our utility system, as well as adding these targeted developments will add $4.5 to $5 million over the 5-year period to the town's coffer. By diversifying these particular revenues, as well as through some recent debt financings refinancings that the board has approved, continued strong growth in this community doesn't happen haphazardly. It happens as a result of the budgets the board approves, and then the investments that we continue to make in our community. I think we have a very enviable position to be in, that this will now be the 15th consecutive year that the town board is able to reduce one of our 5 property taxes, and I would challenge any other entity with that particular record. So we're able to reduce property taxes while continue to maintain or enhance our level of operations as well as capital programs. The property tax reductions this year include 3 of our 5 entities where we levy property taxes. Our interchange district, which essentially has the responsibility to maintain and improve our investments in and around the interchange at Highway 36. Then 2 overlay metro districts. These are districts which the board assumed control of in 2003. The surviving role of the board is essentially to create the property tax mill levy to pay outstanding debt. So in that particular case, we're able to lower 3 of the 5 property taxes. Just as a summary, I guess, for just general public consumption, over the last decade or so, our general property tax rate has dropped by about 10%. This is the property tax rate we use to support our general town operations, our police operations, parks and rec, public works, and utilities operations. The District 2 and District 3 debt service for both these districts has dropped since the board assumed control of these in 2004 by 35 to 40%. One item of note is in 2014, this will be the last year for this particular property tax. After 2018, both these property taxes will go away entirely. And then we have our interchange metropolitan district, where we've seen a decrease in that property tax rate of roughly 28%. And the entities primarily paying that are the businesses in the Superior marketplace. So again, reducing the property tax burden on those businesses so they can remain viable and hopefully survive and thrive.
Did you whip past what's happening to 3, Metro District 3? Is
I
this the
did, I'm
last
sorry.
year?
2 and 3 are somewhat mirrors of each other, but for
Okay.
District 2, we've seen a 37% decrease over the last decade and a half, and in District 3,
I just want people in 3 to know it's their
36.
last year, too.
And this will, and that is correct. And this
Okay.
will cover essentially, over 95% of our residents within town. So they'll be seeing a decreased property tax rate and an elimination of that property tax following 2018 after the debt is retired. This whole concept of financial sustainability and stability, the ability to drop property tax rates, also has a material impact on our utility operation. Over the past decade, so for the past 10 years, our utility operations have not been financially self-sufficient. They've been requiring annually an average transfer from the general fund of roughly $1.5 million. So I can even do that math, $15 million over 10 years that have come out of our general fund coffers that have supported our utility operations. That essentially is ending or near ending. So annual transfers of $1.5 million over the last 10 years over this 5-year planning horizon, and that horizon includes the 2018 budget through 2022, we're looking at a total transfer to assist our utilities of $600,000. What that means is utility self-sufficiency, which is a financial situation you want to get into, but more importantly, perhaps, is what that means is instead of transferring funds $1.5 million a year from our general fund over to utility operation, those monies stay in our general fund operation and can be used at the discretion of the board. We're able to do this over the next 5 years with, we have 3 utility operations, a water, a sewer, and a storm drainage operation. We will have no utility rate increases in our water and our storm drainage operation, and we are still proposing a 5% increase in sewer operations. So part of one of the resolutions you will be approving is a 5% increase in our sewer operations. Our sewer plant and our sewer infrastructure is approaching 20 years old. We're getting additional mandates on a state and a federal level, which are unfunded mandates, improvements we need to make in the particular plant. So that is primarily the reason for that continued rate increase. The impact to residential customers is, as you can see, $1.33 a month. Also, as it relates to our utility fees, we will be increasing our one-time connection fees to our utility system. So when a home builder comes in and is building a new home, they need to connect to get water and sewer service. So we have one-time connection fees. Essentially what an individual is doing is buying a portion of our water plant. They're buying a portion of our water portfolio, whereby then we can acquire water, treat the water, and then distribute it to that particular resident. It wasn't too long ago, we're talking now about 0% water rate increases. It wasn't too long ago, only a few years ago, that similar to the sewer rate increases of 5% a year, we were looking at 5% annual increases in our water rates for the foreseeable future. At this point in time, those have gone away. And again, the reason for that is some of this smart targeted development, which generates not only additional users in our utility operations paying monthly usage charges, but these one-time tap fees. So again, this smart targeted development has a couple of very, very material positive impacts on the finances for the town. We've talked about without transferring money from the town to the utilities, the town is able to keep that particular money and use it for critical town services. And we've already talked about this as well, but one of the reasons that the utilities have become self-sufficient with a combination of growth, combination of capital projects that reduce ongoing operating expenses. But again, this whole issue of the debt refunding, the recent debt refunding, is saving the town, our utility operations, currently about $750,000 a year, and it'll be upwards of $1 million a year for the remaining term of the debt, which runs through 2025. And then another component, obviously, of this particular board goal is business retention. So within this particular document or budget, we're going to continue to fund firms to assist with identification and recruitment of retailers to the town of Superior. Second board goal is providing excellent public services and public infrastructure. Just a couple of highlights for those particular programs. We're going to continue Superior support for the Call and Ride program. Currently, there is a partial grant we're receiving for the program, but the town is subsidizing this particular program. And I think as the manager continues to update the board, this program is continuing to gain additional momentum. Calls for services on an average basis are increasing. I'm getting cars off the roads. A couple of other highlight items is we're going to continue the Jefferson Parkway monitoring and oversight. And similar to this past year where we had franchise negotiation with Comcast, we have an upcoming franchise negotiation with Excel, which will be facilitated by our town attorney. Again, under the auspices of providing this excellent public service, we need staff to do that. So in this particular budget, we're looking at a couple of staffing additions. Our current policing services are provided via contract with Boulder County Sheriff's Department, and we're looking at adding one contract sheriff deputy. This essentially will provide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year coverage within town. There will be at least one officer in town with the addition of this additional deputy. Two other new positions being proposed in this budget, an administrative management analyst, and then the fourth bullet, a committee coordinator. The second position is to primarily assist the town manager's office with the myriad of functions and analysis that those staff perform. The fourth bullet is a committee coordinator with a half dozen or so various committees that we have, demanding a fair amount of time of town staff. The intent of this position is to assist with the facilitation of their particular needs. And the third bullet represents a conversion of our current code enforcement officer who's working 30 hours a week to a full-time position based on needs. Just to give you a highlight of what we're looking in for the following 4 years of the financial plan through 2022. Generally, positions, field positions to support some of our growing operations that we have, predominantly as it relates to downtown Superior. Some additional park staff for Mr. Hammer, some additional field staff for Mr. Arenello, and then another deputy and another detective. But obviously, these positions will be evaluated annually and included in potentially or not in future years' budgets. But just to give a sense of what we're looking at here over the 5-year period.
Paul, could I, quick question on
Sure.
that last one? So I could understand a deputy, another deputy in town in 2020, but a detective, what would we need a detective for?
The IGA, which I think the manager mentioned, you'll see in December, identifies some metrics from Boulder County Sheriff in as much as demands of time and people filling the time. So there are some specific metrics identified for a detective. Detectives will do the analysis of crime work within town, and we're getting close to a point, and it vacillates, but we're getting close to a point, and we will probably exceed the point where essentially in the detective pool for Boulder County Sheriff, we have one detective assigned to all town and Superior case, from the shoplift cases to the DV case, domestic violence cases in the community. As we're anticipating some obviously additional growth in Superior Town Center and some other targeted developments, we're anticipating that caseload will increase. And as part of the IGA, which identifies caseload per detective, we're anticipating that the caseload will be at a point where we will need that additional detective. Did I misspeak too poorly, Chief?
You got most of it.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
And again, evaluated on an annual basis. So none of these are set in stone. Some of the capital programs we're considering in 2018, as well as over the 5-year period, is continued trail connections and Coal Creek corridor improvements, the order of magnitude of $2.6 million in 2018. We will obviously continue our pretty aggressive street maintenance and rehabilitation program. Next year, the budget calls for roughly $2 million in street rehab projects. We're investing $13 million over the 5-year period. Mr. Hammer and his staff will continue to ensure that, you know, our current park recreation and pool improvements, assets continue to be improved to the tune of $2.3 million over the 5-year period. Patrick and his staff also, you know, take pride in ensuring that our, you know, plant and trees species is up to snuff. So again, a $700,000 investment over the 5-year period for those particular assets. We're looking at utility system improvements of $10 million over that 5-year period. One of the biggest utility improvements, and we continually talk about this, is final design for a collaborative water storage vessel known as Windy Gap. There are roughly 12 entities. There are 9 municipalities, 2 water districts, and a power authority who collectively are building this reservoir. Our share of this project in 2018 is about $500,000, and then we'll look at beginning construction collaboratively in 2019. Ultimately, our share for that construction will be $21 million. This is essentially the final big piece of our water portfolio to ensure not only do we have the water, but we have appropriate storage vessels for our water. The board's third goal, engaging residents through outreach and marketing. We'll continue to do that through the town's website. We'll continue to engage residents, predominantly Mr. Hammer and his staff, with not only the current projects that we have, the special events, and Patrick and his staff always seem to find a new special event or two to do in a particular year. We continue to provide volunteering opportunities for folks in our community. We're really excited about kicking off the townwide public art program to the tune of, I think we have $200,000 budgeted for that project next year. So again, engaging residents in the community. And we
Could you just clarify that $200,000 budget is reimbursed? It's not our 200, it's the developer's 200 out of the TIF, right?
Well, at this point in time, we're just showing an expense with no reimbursement. TIF, the property tax increment revenues generated from the Superior Town Center are right now dedicated 100% to debt payments on outstanding infrastructure.
So have we had conversations with the developer around when the $200,000 will be reimbursed?
They aren't able to give us a specific time frame currently.
But there's directional head nodding.
Yes. Yep.
That it will be reimbursed.
Yep.
At a date to be determined.
To be determined.
Thank you.
So again, and this generally applies to conservative budgeting from the standpoint of we recognize this as a public improvement, we're expensing it, and hopefully we'll get reimbursement for it. Outreach also contains a dozen or so items that you'll see here, and I won't go through these, but there are messaging boards and web streaming and all the mechanisms we do to inform our citizens of what's going on here in town. Fourth board goal is that of open space. We're looking at a roughly $1.6 million project for Coal Creek Corridor enhancements. This is a collaborative project with our partner at Urban Drainage, where we'll be roughly splitting this particular project expense. We will continue to work with Boulder County on maintenance and education surrounding open space. Fifth goal is promoting and management development opportunities. This includes continuing the Superior Marketplace revitalization, and a good example of that is last month, where the board approved an infill there of Ethan Allen. Integrating the marketplace development with that of downtown Superior, and then additionally overseeing additional development activity, as noted there. That's predominantly smart targeted residential development, and in Resolute's case, some non-residential hopefully hotel development. Sixth board goal of encouraging environmental sustainability. We still have monies budgeted for green enhancements in and around town facilities. These will be LED lights or solar panels, or I think this year Mr. Toth is spending money on charging stations. We'll continue our work with the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee on improvements throughout town. And the town will continue to fund our water conservation efforts. These are incentive or rebate program to citizens to install water conservation devices within their home typically. Some general assumptions for the budget. As you have all seen probably with your property valuation notifications from Boulder County, we are seeing increasing valuations here in town as a result of not only revaluation of existing property, but construction of new property, and this will have a positive impact on property tax revenues for the town. We already ran through, as a result of these increasing property tax values, we are able to reduce property tax rates of 3 of our 5 property tax rates, and we went through that. What continues to fund our municipality and other municipalities, we're no different, is sales tax revenue. We're assuming roughly $10 million in sales tax revenues next year. We're very excited by the first hotel coming into town at the end of next year with the Element, and then the continued development and growth around downtown Superior will help with the stabilization and hopefully expansion of sales tax revenue. I don't want to be too much of an alarmist, but I read this morning about with the first round of the Black Friday sales, about brick and mortar sales were down 4%, online sales up 18%. It's something we need to continue to be diligent and monitor. But these type of developments are a good way for us to continue to stabilize our sales tax. Sales tax is important because it funds 60% of our general town operations. We're looking at the puke brown part of the chart there. It funds pretty much all of our capital operations and our open space operations, as well as payments we have associated with the Superior Urban Renewal Authority. And then our interchange district is funded half by sales tax revenues and half by property tax revenues. So again, sales tax, critical component that we need to continue to remind ourselves of. This is a very important graph. It's what I was talking about with our utility operations, where in the past, so over the next 5 years, the utility operations will get 1% of its funding from sales tax revenues. This in the past was anywhere from 30 to 35%. So again, a good story to tell. We like to provide a quick summary of our debt service. Essentially, and I didn't note it here, and I should have, but as a reminder, debt goes away for District 2 and District 3 following 2018. Formal debt for our marketplace, so for our Costco Urban Renewal Authority, that debt expires in 2019. So we continue to aggressively pay down debt. I'm not saying that that's bad, that does have its purpose, but it needs to be managed, and I think we've done a good job in managing that. Next year, we're planning a pay down of outstanding principal to the tune of about $5 million. At the end of 2018, our outstanding debt load, this is overall for the town, will be $28 million. That's a material drop from our peak in 2006 at $71 million. And this next graph, you've seen it time and again, but it's just a takeaway as it relates to how we have addressed outstanding debt needs. Now, having said that, we are looking at potentially the need for new debt, not in next year's budget, but again, to kind of plant the seed with you, we're looking at a required improvement at our wastewater treatment plant in 2020, so we are looking at potentially some debt funding at that point in time, but more to come on that particular project. We will have included in this budget and the resolutions that you are improving, we are going to have a couple of minor updates to some of our fees. These are just more inflationary modifications. What staff does annually is we review all the town's fee schedules, from park and recreation fees to liquor licenses to building permit fees, to our utility fees. And we look at making modifications where it makes sense. So we have some just minor inflationary adjustment to those 3 fee items.
So question on that, please?
Yes.
So we had talked about, it's come up a couple times around the facility rental, particularly around parks and whether or not, or tennis courts, and whether or not we have preferential treatment to residents versus non-residents. And I think the consensus, healthy dialogue, but the consensus was we shouldn't exclude our neighboring towns' residents from participating, but maybe we provide discounts to our towns. Can you pull up the, I looked at the fee schedule and I couldn't see that differentiated. Can you show me if we have in fact implemented a fee schedule that shows a difference between Superior residents and non-residents?
So we'll roll, so this is what we call our governmental fee schedule. And what Trustee Ryan is referencing is here at the end, we are talking about parks, or parks and recreation fees. And so we will differentiate for a baseball field.
And this is new, correct?
This is not new. This we have been doing. We are going to, as a result of our dialogue with the board in review of the budget, we are going, Patrick and his staff are going to take a much more intense look at this.
So so there was, for example, a resident observation that local business owner was not able to rent fields, yet the Superior or Louisville town was renting fields, and effectively their cancellation rate was so small, they were renting fields and then canceling at the last minute, which was blocking him. Have we fixed that? I thought we were fixing that on the budget.
So that's part of ProStack's work plan for the upcoming year. We're working on the field reservation system right now in terms of prioritizing business uses that are in town. It's not implemented as of yet.
So we didn't fix it yet?
Not
Okay.
yet. But
That's
it's,
cool.
and it's a ProStack work plan item for all facilities across the board, including tennis facilities.
Yeah, interesting that that's ProStack. I mean, I think, I guess we'll do it when we look at the ProStack work plan for the year. I'd like to see you and your staff lead that initiative with ProStack sort of weighing in, not the other way around, personally. But maybe we should probably discuss. I'm off budget topic.
We are. I'll just say we're leading the charge. We're doing the research. It was our understanding we needed to run it through them, but yeah, I think we're making some really solid headway on it.
Thanks.
And really, the fee changes, since I have this pulled up, just to show you how innocuous they are for Mr. Hammer and his operation, is we're now including within the fee schedule, we have new shelters, for example, at Wildflower Park. So we're putting those within the fee schedule, and at least right now, with the consistent fees as our other shelters. So it's those type of changes that are included. I would argue nothing material there. And then additionally, as I think has already been mentioned, we're looking at a 5% increase in 2018 in the sewer fees, which will have, I would argue, minimal impact to our customers. The inflationary increases in our system development fees. And I think that generally provides an overview for the board. The board, again, hopefully has heard most of this information, but obviously staff is here to answer any additional questions or provide clarifications on any of the budget items.
I'd love to hear from Sergeant Chamberlain. Evening. Are you happy with the budget? Do you have everything you need?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other easy questions? Softballs? Questions, discussion?
This is more of comments about, I had a handful of residents email me or call me and say that this was the first time they saw the budget. And some of them were out of town because it was the night after the holiday weekend or just couldn't make it. And so there was just some concern about the fact that public didn't feel, and this was only a handful of people, so I'm not knowing how widespread it is, but I think that we should listen to that and hear that this was the first time that they felt that they were seeing it, because our budget meetings that we had during the early part of the year were mostly during the day. And so tonight was the first time, and they couldn't be here, and there were some questions that would have liked to have been asked, or maybe more deeper participation. So one of the things that was recommended is that if we could consider this as a first reading of the budget and then approve it on our December 11th meeting. I'm not saying that I want that to happen, but I think it was a good suggestion given the fact that this Monday night happens to fall right after a long holiday weekend. And there many people were kind of feeling like, what happened? How did this budget get here to us tonight? You know, from a public perspective. And again, it's not like a large uprising of people, but enough people made comment to me that I thought it was worth the comment to be made in public.
We can, maybe Paul can go over how we publicize it, but we can do a better job in the future publicizing it more as well.
And respectfully, I think this comment always comes up, but generally the process is the budget was developed by staff, delivered to the board near the end of August. At that point in time, it was published on the website. We've used the monthly newsletter over the last several months, letting people know, generally that, here are some provisions of the budget. We had the 2 meetings that you mentioned with the board. And obviously those review meetings were held primarily during the day, but they're publicized like any other meeting. Email blasts, go out, but we hear what you're saying. There are always those particular comments, so I think we will continue to be diligent with trying to educate our community members that, in fact, the budget review is happening, but for the last 3 months, there have been some level of notification going out.
Right, and I understand that, and I appreciate your reviewing that. I think it just, the timing of this meeting, that it's kind of like, wait a second, what? Where you're doing budget, and some people really like looking at budget numbers. It's more than just you, Paul.
They've had an opportunity since the end of August.
I know, but they don't get to it. Usually, residents don't until it's actually published on a agenda for a public hearing to finalize it. So I'm just making that comment that I think that in the future we might want to think about maybe having 2 nights where the public could actually come and discuss and have comments made about the budget, rather than just one.
Matt, were you going to originally schedule this for the last board meeting, or is it your intent to always have it at this meeting? Because I did ask for a couple of things to be moved to this because I missed the last meeting.
I mean, originally we had it scheduled for the first meeting in November, but
So
it's always better to
partially my
have a
fault 'cause
full
I'd asked
board.
them to wait because I wanted to be here for it.
Yeah, it seems like we usually
Matt,
do it
question
earlier.
Earlier, yeah.
I didn't get any feedback, but most of my friends aren't
Numbies?
they're not. So would there be, it does concern me, right, that if we heard that feedback, that maybe we should take a breath. Is there any downside to that if we don't approve this tonight and if we kick the can 2 weeks and wait for public comment?
There is something with the county, and as far as
So the property tax rates as well as the budget approval needs to happen by state statute by December 15th?
15th.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
so, I
So
mean,
you could delay it once, but not any more than that.
right, yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind, some of the larger items within the budget still require board approval.
Right, we're not, it doesn't mean
Next
we're
year
gonna.
as well, yeah.
Yeah, I think you've made a good point. I mean, I'm good either way, but if we need to take a breath and make sure that the community is reviewed and commented on, good with that as well. Be curious what other people think.
Sandy?
I wanted, during the September process, right, it was in September, we talked about the additions of staff, and we talked about the committee coordinator and the administrative management analyst, I think it's called, and we actually played around with those responsibilities, and yet we've gone back to them as originally proposed. So, Matt, could you or the appropriate person address, for example, on the administrative management analyst, we talked about possibly bumping that up a level so that it actually is a bit of succession planning. But tell us what salary level we're talking about and where you see that going.
Yeah, so in our discussions, we feel that the professional requirements for the position and technical skills are at an appropriate level for what's needed within the department. Now, I will say a number of our analysts over the years have been promoted to management type. They have that within their skill set and education to where they can grow into those succession type positions.
What level is this position? Is it entry level? Is it mid-level?
No, most of our management analysts require a master's degree.
Okay.
A bachelor's degree minimum with a master's degree, or in the process of getting their master's degree preferred. So
Okay.
that gives you an idea of the type of.
And what kind of salary range?
Well,
54,000 to 75,000.
Okay. Okay. And what about this committee coordinator? It seems a very narrow focus to me.
yeah, Patrick can come up and give you just an idea of the amount of time that is needed by his staff and Martin on RCAC to just coordinate on a daily basis all the different committees.
And the ultimate question is committee coordination somebody's full-time job?
I think given with the 5 committees in Parks and Rec and given the scope of what we're starting to cover, I do believe that it's worth a full-time job. I think something that we've heard not only from the board but also from the advisory committee themselves and from our citizens is that we actually don't do a great job closing all the gaps and communicating and keeping everybody on the same page.
So will this person be the liaison to all committees?
No, this person, we would still have the staff with the institutional knowledge attending the meetings and supporting the committees, which I think is incredibly valuable. This person I see helping with getting all the agendas synced up, getting all of the calendars synced up, making sure that we're hitting our deadlines, and advertising and communicating all that the committees are working on. This wouldn't be a replacement for staff, but the logistics that go along with managing close to 50 volunteers in the operation department, it's a significant amount of our time.
How do you see this different than our volunteer coordinator?
Volunteer coordinator, 20 hours a week, part-time, also responsible for youth advisory committee. What he's primarily, Kevin, being responsible for is the actual, the marketing, meeting the groups on Saturday, creating the job descriptions for the actual volunteer projects, putting together our matrix, making sure that we're, following through with the project from start to finish. The committee coordinator position was always much more logistical, helping us with Granicus, making sure the website information is accurate.
What kind of salary?
Lower end, entry-level position.
Okay.
I don't know if I've got that off the top of my head. I think our committee position, low
Okay.
40s.
Okay, so on to something else. Matt, how are the Parks 1 and 2 projects? We took all the funding out at one point. Is funding back in?
No. What we're waiting for is get pricing from a contractor that, we may be able to utilize urban drainage contractor again to do not the entire Coal Creek improvement projects plus the parks. And so once we get a price from them, an initial price of what they think it would cost to build Parks 1 and 2, then we can go back to Avanti and start working on financing.
But we do intend to continue that work
We
actively in
yeah.
2018.
It's,
In other words, it's back on track.
well,
Is it back sort of on track?
the discussions will start up again on figuring out a way to finance those 2 parks.
Okay. At least there's some movement, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then a couple of things that, for example, I didn't see under the CIP budget, or it didn't strike me, the monument sign. Apparently we're going to put a Town of Superior sign at 128th and McCaslin next year. Is that design gonna come before the board? Yes. Is it gonna go before CAPS? Had you planned to put it before CAPS?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Simple.
I think it's smart to have some eyes on this. And then I was pleased to see some reconsideration of our landscape fee situation, because as you know, I'm a little astounded that somehow Coal Creek Crossing came into being without having that assessed to those 57 homes. So I do think that needs to be reassessed just for equity throughout the community. So I appreciate that. That's all for me.
Sandy?
I have a couple of questions I wanted to ask about. On the changes, you sent a sheet, Paul, that talked about the changes from the preliminary 8/25/17 budget, and one of them, number 2 on your list, included leasing office space. And I have to say I was quite surprised by that, because I don't remember there being any discussion to that effect at the when we did the budget. I mean, it was not in the budget at that time. I assume that this has happened because we declined the town hall patio conversion. So I would like to hear some more from the town manager about the budgeted, the addition of the line item for the office lease. I just want this to go on record because it wasn't in the original budget that we reviewed. What it's going to cost, where you plan on putting it, and which staff you plan locating in this space.
So initial thoughts would be out at the Superior Marketplace, at the small office space along Center Drive next to, I think, the sheriff's office. Substation is there, along with Public Works and Utility staff is there as well. We haven't had a lot of internal discussion yet about which staff would be relocated if this gets approved in the budget, but right now my initial thought is the finance staff, because they have the least amount of contact with walk-ins at Town Hall. And then your third question was?
Just an explanation publicly of the expense.
So we need additional space for staff. I've heard the board say that don't have would like to figure out indoor space for the town as far as either community space, recreation space, which I understand completely, before spending any money on additional space for staff. This was an alternative that we came up with, to where the initial cost, the annual cost will be $25,000 a year, with a one-time cost to renovate the space.
$50,000 to
Yes,
renovate the
that's
space.
correct.
Okay. You know, my opinion's been that we don't spend any more money on our staff until we start tackling some of the projects that we want to do for the citizens, but I could be convinced one way or the other. So I was just surprised that that showed up, because that we were not told that that would show up in the budget. Then the second comment that I wanted to make was, I don't think we had any discussions during the budget hearings about items 9 and 10, which are now discussing that we will delay the repayment of the $1 million loan from the open space fund, instead of paying it all back next year, that we will extend it over an additional 3 years. And the statement is that we will do that in order to do the projects that we had, as a staff or as a board, had discussed moving into the current year, which was $175,000 for pickleball courts and $300,000 for the South Pool skate park. On the other hand, we cut $225,000 out of the budget for the town hall patio conversion. So my first comment is, we haven't had any discussion about extending this loan, and I don't feel good about it. We haven't even had the conversation with OSAC about it. So that's one of the reasons I would like to see us delay the budget, so we could talk with OSAC. You know, they're not even aware of this, as far as I know. But the more important thing is, when we talked about the budget during the budget meetings, we cut out the $225,000 and said, wow, that gets us pretty close to doing the skate park, or it will get us the pickleball court. And so rather than see us try and do all of it in 2018, is there a way that we can spend the $225,000 savings, not extend this loan out for another 2 years, and still accomplish what we want to accomplish? So I'm really uncomfortable extending the loan out.
Well, how much have we paid back of that loan so far to date?
So the initial loan was $2 million, and we've paid back $1 million of this. Our balance in our capital fund is very lean. And respectfully, Trustee Hammerly, I think this dialogue did come up, and I think even the open space chair commented on that. And it was a little bit concerned, but I think his concern was that if in fact an open space opportunity came up, that somehow we find an opportunity to pay back the open space fund sooner versus later. So I think at least he had opined, recognizing that this was happening. But again, the reason is that essentially the next 3 years we are spending down our capital fund balance, where we are ending each year with about $100,000 to $200,000. So we have a limited opportunity to pay that loan back more aggressively.
So I still think I want to, do we have to, if we don't do all of the park and ProStack recommendations in, I might consider moving that loan out another year, but we committed to the town that we would pay it back at the end of 2 years, and I think we should fulfill our obligation. So, I don't like the surprise, and I don't remember it, but maybe everybody else does. So that's just me. And I don't know that we necessarily have to do both the pickleball court and the skate park in 1 year. I'd like to consider looking at one of them in 2018 and one in 2019.
But we did have a discussion about just, I think, the solvency of the open space fund and the amount of money that's coming in on an annual basis, and that in the event that some unique opportunity presented itself to the town, we would have different means beyond the open space fund, with the Windy Gap affirming and some other available kind of pools of money. And I don't think we were in any position where we felt that we weren't able to capitalize on an open space acquisition if an opportunity presented itself.
I don't think that's what Sandy's referring to, though. The way I understand, we made a commitment to open space when we borrowed that $2 million to pay it back in a certain time frame, and we're now changing that. It's not that there is a crying need for it to buy a particular set of particular open space property. It's the fulfillment of that commitment we made to pay it back in a certain time frame. And I don't remember the conversation either, but I do remember the open space chair opining on something as well. So if that's what he opined on, then I apologize. But it didn't seem to me like that's what he opined on. And if, in fact, this is what we do, I surely would hope that we would run it by open space and let them know that we are extending that repayment out, and would at least good faith notice to them that we are doing that. I don't know if we've notified them or not.
Well,
but
and I recall in the second budget meeting, we had this discussion. Do we advance the skate park? Do we advance pickleball? But in order to do it, we're going to have to defer the payment. And, you know, when I talk to kids in this community and when I talk to parents, they want to know, where did that skate park go and when are you going to put it back? And I don't really think they care about money sitting in some account that's could be used to build a skate park. They just want the skate park. So, you know, this is what we have the opportunity to do, is to make things happen. And so this is, to me, just a very easy example of how we can make a decision to move money from one hand to the other and get things done, just like we've done on parks and other things. And we've heard the commitment that if an open space acquisition opportunity comes along, we'll figure that out. We'll figure out a way to make that happen. I don't think we're foregoing any opportunities here.
I don't have any issue with what you're saying. What I do have an issue with, we've got a duly seated 9-member committee, and let's just treat them with respect about these commitments.
Right, so I think that's a good point, and I do think, you know, giving them a heads up, and I'm not sure if that's maybe another compelling reason to take a breath, and having open space comment, and hopefully their comments are supportive of the board direction, because I do think we talked about this, and we talked about it extending. And one of the points we wanted was to make sure that the interest rate was increased, and I do think we've increased the interest rate from 1 to 1.5. So, you know, good job there. That seems reasonable and equitable for reimbursement. I also don't want to kind of slide backwards here. I'm very comfortable with the budget as is, and then I think if we start doing things like taking out some much needed and much appreciated new amenities, much desired and much appreciated new amenities, then I'd rather take a pen to other expenses, right? So I do not want to take a pen to the pickleball or the skate park for budgeting purposes. And if we can't make it work, then let's take out our pens and have another work session and figure out what gets cut. Which of the 3 or 4 new heads are cut? What could Sergeant Chamberlain live without? I don't want to have those conversations, but I would have those conversations before revisiting the conversation of the delayed repayment of the loan, of the balance of the loan.
Well, typically, at the end of a year, we have, to me, budget surpluses. Maybe I'm wrong, Paul can correct me, but we typically don't fund certain things during the year, and we have budget surpluses. So I would just ask that if that's the case, as we finish 2018, that we think about repaying that loan with that money rather than advancing it forward into the general fund or whatever. So, you know, it's just,
Right.
you get the point. Let's treat our committees with respect.
I do want to comment on one of the things Ann Hammerly said, and I do think, and I very much agree with her on the leasing of the new space. I don't think it's appropriate for that to come to the board if you're going to sign a new month-to-month lease for a couple $1,000s, but maybe let's include it, please, in the memos, in the manager memos that we get. You know, I was surprised that maybe other people, maybe I missed the memo, quite literally, when Parks and Rec went across the street. You know, I think we just need to make sure that we're aware we don't have that many staff. I feel like if somebody says, hey, where is the finance department located? I should be able to answer that question without calling you or anybody else, so let's just include that, please. And they are arguably kind of material dollars, right? So I'd like to know. So thanks.
Okay, other questions, comments? Okay, any public comment on the budget? Okay, seeing none. Anything further before I close this public hearing? Okay, public hearing's closed. Further discussion?
So how do other people feel about the kicking the can a couple weeks?
I'm not in favor of that.
Me neither.
I think it's been adequately noticed. The budget meetings were recorded. This has all been a very open book. So
I didn't get feedback, but I respect what you got. So.
Like I said, it wasn't an overwhelming, but I think we should make note of things like that when people.
Sure.
Because if more than one comment to me, then I take note of that, that. And I think it's just a function, again, this is a holiday weekend.
Yeah,
that's what it
we
is.
usually do this sooner, so
Right.
it does feel a little unusual coming right after Thanksgiving, and I think that's just kind of a function of the way the calendar worked out this year. And we had some scheduling issues in the first. Some board members were out on the first meeting in November when this would have usually been held, so I think it would have perhaps been different. But yeah, point well taken.
I think we spent the time going through, the budget in extreme detail in September at those two meetings. Paul, I think you did a fantastic job with your staff, preparing the budget, walking us through it, making sure that everybody understood it. We obviously took the time to make sure that certain priorities were getting advanced, like the skate park and the pickleball courts, and I think that that's great. I'm happy to see that happening in 2018. So I don't see any reason to not vote on this tonight and advance it and then move on to whatever's next on our agenda in December.
Others?
Doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I guess my only concern is I heard Paul say that we do have to have some things done by a certain date, and that if something goes wrong at the first board meeting in December, then we could be in trouble. So
Well, and we're all here right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's things happen,
I
and
say
we may
just
not
do
all
it
be
and
here.
let's improve it a bit
Yeah.
next
Yep.
year.
Historically, we've never had an issue, and so
Right.
everything's good to me. So just approve it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. Go ahead.
Multiple motions.
Get this
We
going.
should each take one.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
I'll start it out, yeah.
Okay.
I'll do two.
Move we approve Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 Resolution SMD 1 dash.
Wait, first you have, under I, the
Oh.
adoption of resolution levying general and library service property taxes.
I'm on the wrong one.
15AI.
Gosh. I am way on the wrong one.
You're in the wrong year.
I'm probably at the wrong meeting. I move we approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R
53,
53.
53, yeah.
53, Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior levying property taxes for the year 2018.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Pennington, second by Trustee Hanson.
Yep.
Roll call.
Okay. Trustee
ass-
Dozal?
Yes.
I'm assuming we do roll call on all these.
Yes.
Is that right? Yes, okay, thank you.
Mayor Folsom?
Yes.
Trustee Hammerly?
Yes.
Trustee Hanson?
Yes.
Trustee Lasis?
Yes.
Trustee Pennington?
Yes.
Trustee Ryan?
Yes.
Want to do the next one?
Go ahead.
Make a motion that we approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R dash, I'm sorry, I didn't get
It's 5-4.
54, Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior adopting a budget for the Town of Superior for 2018.
Motion by Trustee Hanson.
Second.
Second by Trustee Lasis.
Trustee Dozal?
Yes.
Mayor Folsom?
Yes.
Trustee Hammerly?
Yes.
Trustee Hanson?
Yes.
Trustee Lasis?
Yes.
Trustee Pennington?
Yes.
Trustee Ryan?
Yes.
Okay. Who's next?
Read it.
Okay, I make a motion that we approve Town of Superior Resolution Number R-55, Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior adopting a fee schedule for 2018.
Trustee Dizal?
Motion by trustee
Oh.
Dozal.
Sorry.
Yes, okay, you're going right on it.
Oh, Chris.
Second by trustee Hammerly.
Okay, Trustee Dizal.
Yes.
Mayor Folsom?
Yes.
Trustee Hammerly?
Yes.
Trustee Hansen?
Yes.
Trustee Lasis?
Yes.
Trustee Pennington?
Yes.
And Trustee Ryan?
Yes. Make a motion, Town of Superior ordinance number
9.
O.9, Series 2017, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior appropriating sums of money to the various funds and spending agencies in the amounts and for the purposes of, as set forth below, for the Town of Superior, Colorado, for the 2018 year.
Motion by trustee Ryan.
Second.
Second by trustee Lasis. All those in favor? Or not those? Roll call.
Trustee Dizal.
Yes.
Mayor Folsom?
Yes.
Trustee Hammerly?
Yes.
Trustee Hansen?
Yes.
Trustee Lasis?
Yes.
Trustee Pennington?
Yes.
Trustee Ryan?
Yes.
Thank you. Who's next? Sandy Hammerly. You want to take the next one?
Sure. Make a motion for Town of Superior Resolution Number R-56, Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a budget and levying the debt service property taxes for Superior Metropolitan Districts Number 2 and Superior Metropolitan District Number 3 for the year 2018.
Okay, motion by trustee Hammerly, second by trustee Dozal, and just a point of
Yeah.
correction, the,
D-Town.
we got D-Town of Superior
Yeah.
for the title.
Just typo.
There's a typo at the top there. Kind of makes it fun, but.
It does. I lived in the town.
Okay,
Trustee
Approving.
Dizal.
Yes.
Mayor Folsom?
yes.
Trustee Hammerly?
Yes.
Trustee Hansen?
Yes.
Trustee Lasis?
Yes.
Trustee Pennington?
Yes.
And Trustee Ryan?
Yes.
All right, we're on to item B, Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District.
Do we have a resolution attached?
Mm-hmm.
It's in the wrong one.
Oh,
It's
I don't
in-
see
Yeah,
it.
it's
Okay.
It's in-
I'll make a motion
Okay.
for Superior / McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District Resolution SMID-3,
3.
Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District adopting a budget, levying property taxes, and appropriating sums of money for 2018.
Motion by Director Lasis, and
Second.
second by Director Hammerly.
Trustee Dizal.
Yes.
Mayor Folsom?
Yes.
Trustee Hammerly?
Yes.
Trustee Hansen?
Yes.
Trustee Lasis?
Yes.
Trustee Pennington?
Yes.
Trustee Ryan?
Yes.
Just for the record, those are all
Board of Directors.
Board.
Thank you.
All right, we're
So
on.
now we're back down around, I moved.
C-
So
Aye.
we're on to, we're on to item C, Superior Urban Renewal Authority.
These are commissioners.
Okay.
I know, it keeps changing.
Put on
Yeah.
put on your commissioner hat.
I'll make a motion. Superior Urban Renewal Authority Resolution Sura-2,
2.
Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Superior Urban Renewal Authority adopting a budget and appropriating sums of money for the Superior Urban Renewal Authority for 2018.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Lasis,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hansen.
Commissioner Dizal.
Yes.
Commissioner Folsom?
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerly?
Yes.
Commissioner Hansen?
Yes.
Commissioner Lasis?
Yes.
Commissioner Pennington?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ryan?
Yes.
So now we're down to Metro District.
Next is item D, Superior Metropolitan District Number 1.
I'll take that one. I've been
Okay.
ready all night with that one.
Okay.
I move we approve Superior Metro District Number 1 Resolution SMD 1-6, Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Directors of Superior Metro District Number 1 adopting a budget and appropriating sums of money for the Superior Metro District Number 1 for 2018.
Motion by Director Pennington and second by Director Hammerly.
Director Dizal,
Yes.
Director Folsom,
Yes.
Director Hammerly,
Yes.
Director Hansen,
Yes.
Director Lasis,
Yes.
Director Pennington,
Yes.
Director Ryan.
Yes.
All right, next one. I make a motion that we approve Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, Resolution Number SMD Number 1-7.
7.
Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District Number 1 amending Appendix A of the district's rules and regulations to increase the district's rate and fees effective March 11, 2018.
Motion by Director Hansen.
Second.
Second by Director Lasis.
Director Dizal,
Yes.
Director Folsom,
Yes.
Director Hammerly,
Yes.
Director Hansen,
Yes.
Director Lasis,
Yes.
Director Pennington,
Yes.
Director Ryan.
Yes.
All right, very good. We are done with the 2018 budget. Now we're on to item number 16, public hearings and adoption of resolutions for amendments to the 2017 budget. Public hearings now open.
Proof of
Publication
publication.
is confirmed.
Thank
Town
you.
manager.
So Paul is going to walk you through three budget amendments we have for 2017 that we're going to be asking the board to approve.
Thank you, Mr. Magley, Paul Nels, town staff. I will deal with all three of these collectively, even though they affect Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District, as well as the Superior Renewal Authority. Just for background information, this is very typical, this procedure at the end of the year. Essentially by state statute, we have to ensure that the budget we have in place is higher than our anticipated expenses. So typically at the end of the year, we do clean up budget amendments where we have issues that have happened within these particular entities, and typically what they revolve around are capital projects not being completed in year one when they were initially budgeted, and instead those funds essentially rolling forward. We complete the project in year two, and essentially are reappropriating the monies. So that is the case for Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, where we had a sewer capital project, or wastewater treatment bar screen upgrade project, which we're anticipating to complete last year. Didn't happen. We're completing now this year, and we are just re-budgeting those funds so we're in compliance with state statute. Similar arrangement happening with the snowmass drainage work. It was a project I believe the board approved last month. We essentially received additional FEMA reimbursement for some 2003 flood expenses. We're using those funds to complete the snowmass work and budgeting accordingly. Within the interchange district, we had a trail project behind essentially Breaks Plus, essentially that was budgeted last year, where we didn't complete it last year. We're completing it this year, rebudgeting those funds. And there's another project within the interchange district. This is the Davidson Mesa underpass contribution, where initially we were planning to reimburse the city of Louisville for our contribution in 2018. And in dialogue with the Campus Drive project, we agreed with the city of Louisville officials' request to reimburse them this year. So now we're budgeting for the funds, and we have appropriate cash to pay for that and have made that payment. And then the final budget amendment was within our Urban Renewal Authority. This again is good news, where it looks like we will collect a little bit more sales tax revenue than we anticipated within the Superior Marketplace. That revenue essentially that comes in the Superior Marketplace then is distributed either to the general fund, to the utility operation, or to pay back Superior urban renewal debt or other obligations. So it's just recognizing the receipt of some additional monies and paying those particular expenses. So that is the overview.
Okay. Questions? Discussion? Or questions, not discussion. Yeah. Public comment? Anything before I close the public hearing? Public hearing's closed. Discussion? Motions?
I'll make a motion that we approve Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, Resolution SMD Number 1-8, Series 2017, A resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior Metropolitan District, number 1, approving a supplemental budget and appropriations for 2017.
Motion by Director Lasis, second by Director Pennington.
Director Dozal?
Yes.
Director Folsom?
Yes.
Director Hammerly?
Yes.
Director Hansen?
Yes.
Director Lasis?
Yes.
Director Pennington?
Yes.
Director Ryan?
Yes.
Okay, item B is amending the Superior
I'll make a motion.
McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District. Okay.
I'll make a motion, Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District, Resolution SMID 4, Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Directors of the Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District approving a supplemental budget and appropriations for 2017.
Motion by Director Ryan, second by Director Hansen.
Director Dozal?
Yes.
Director Folsom?
Yes.
Director Hammerly?
Yes.
Director Hansen?
Yes.
Director Lasis?
Yes.
Director Pennington?
Yes.
Director Ryan?
Yes. Well, it's open. I'll make a motion, Superior Urban Renewal Authority Resolution SUR-3, Series 2017, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Superior Urban Renewal Authority approving a supplemental budget and appropriations for 2017.
Motion by Commissioner Ryan, second by Commissioner Dozal.
Commissioner Dozal?
Yes.
Commissioner Folsom?
Yes.
Commissioner Hammerly?
Yes.
Commissioner Hansen?
No. Just thought I'd change it up. I'm kidding. Yes.
Commissioner
you can't change it.
Commissioner Lasis?
Yes.
Commissioner Pennington?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ryan?
Yes. Yes.
You're forever marked as a no.
Okay. Note the time. We're out of schedule. All right, can we take a 5-minute break before our next item? Okay.